States, we good? All right. I want to welcome everybody here tonight. And I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, November 15th, 2021 to order. The city strongly recommends that you review tonight's agenda carefully, and if you wish to speak on any item on the agenda, then please bring a comment card to our city clerk as soon as possible. While the Milton rules allow a speaker to turn in their comment card up until the time the clerk calls the agenda item. Once the agenda item is called, there will be no more comment cards can be accepted. Okay, Tammy, so if you could please call roll and make general announcements.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the November 15th, 2021 regular meeting. I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Those attending the meeting who would like to make a public comment, you are required to complete a public comment card prior to speaking on the item. Your comment card must be presented to the city clerk prior to the agenda items being called. All speakers, please identify yourself by name, address, and organization before beginning your comment. If you are representing an organization, an affidavit is required stating you have the authority to speak on behalf of that organization. Please review tonight's agenda, and if you would like to make a public comment, please bring your comment card to me now. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited. Please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outburst, or dialogue with any person speaking. Anyone in violation will be asked to leave. As I call roll this evening, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Peyton Jameson.
Here.
Councilmember Paul Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Laura Bentley.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Longoria.
Here.
And Councilmember Rick Morg.
Here.
And for the record, Councilmember Carol Cookerly is absent. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, good evening. Want to welcome everybody here. We're glad you're here tonight. And if our city clerk can please call the next item.
Mayor, that item is approval of the meeting agenda. It's agenda item number 21329.
Okay. Do I have is there any changes on the agenda anybody wants to see? Okay. Do I have a motion on the approval of the agenda?
Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as stated, agenda item number 21-329.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion from Councilmember Moore with a second from Councilmember Bentley on approval of the agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, our next item is general public comment. And public comment is a time for citizens to share information with the mayor and city council and to provide input and information on any matter that is not scheduled for its own public hearing during tonight's meeting. Each citizen who chooses to participate in public comment must complete a comment card and submit it to the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. Please remember this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of the city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes for remarks. The city encourages you to review the agenda, and if you wish to speak, to bring your comment cards to the city clerk as of now. And I will ask, do we have any general public comment?
We have one general, Mayor.
Okay.
I'd like to invite Judy Birds to the podium, please.
Okay.
Hi, Judy Birds, 1165 Bream Drive here in Milton, Georgia. I'd like to request that the council consider publishing the agendas for these meetings and other city council meetings 7 days in advance. While applicants may have the knowledge of their schedule on their items, the current short lead time on publication of the agenda does not allow sufficient preparation for citizens or council. So I please request that you look at a longer time, preferably 7 days, for the publication of agendas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. If Tammy, if you'll please sound that item.
Thank you, Mayor. That first item is approval of the October 18th, 2021 City Council meeting minutes. Agenda item number 21330. Item B is approval of the November 1st, 2021 City Council meeting minutes. It's agenda item 21331. Item C is approval of the audit engagement letter with Malden and Jenkins LLC to audit the city's financial statements for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2021. It's agenda item number 21332. Item D is approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Milton and ECS Southeast LLP for geotechnical services of pavement evaluation on the Morris Road widening project. It's agenda item number 21333. Item E is approval of a right of entry indemnification and maintenance agreement between the City of Milton and Bloom General Store LLC. Agenda item number 21334. Item F is approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Milton and Mr. Juan Cuero doing business as JQ AV Techs for the configuration and operation of the city's AV equipment during city meetings. Agenda item number 21335. Item G, approval of subdivision plats and revisions. The name of the development is Johnson and Blanchard, 126 Rose Mill Street and 16394 Waxmore Road, land lot 194 and 195, District 2, Section 2. It is a minor plat to transfer 0.92 acres from Lot 83 to Lot 82. It's a total of 9.81 acres with a density of 0.20 lots per acre. Agenda item number 21336. Item H is approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Milton and Pond and Company for landscape design services at the Thompson Bird Senior House, the home of the Milton Senior Center. It's agenda item number 21337. Our final item I, approval of a construction services agreement between the City of Milton and Paver Clean and Seal of Georgia, Inc. for paver repair, cleaning, and sealing at Milton City Hall. It's agenda item number 21338. Mayor Lockwood.
Okay, do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent.
All right, I have a motion from Councilmember Morag for approval of the consent agenda with a second from Councilmember Longoria. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to reports and presentations. Amy, if you'll please read the first item.
Yes, Mayor. That first item is Milton General Municipal Election Discussion. Mayor Lockwood.
Okay, and I know we've got several public comment cards. What I'd like to do is discuss this for a minute and then certainly allow the public comment, and then we can continue discussing this. But just in recap, I know pretty much unanimously everyone on this board was in favor of looking into the possibility and the structure if we can run our own elections. And we had talked about, former committee and Councilmember Morag had agreed to take lead on that. I know there was some concern from council that brought to the city manager on the structure and the process moving forward, which in turn he brought to my attention, and I just said, asked to reach out to the council, send an email, and so that's kind of where we've left it as far as we haven't done anything since then. So I know Councilmember Morag may have something to say, and then I'll ask Steve to step in.
Sure. Thanks, Joe. The intent of having this topic discussed tonight is to formally get council's direction and approval to conduct a feasibility study on whether we can conduct and run our own municipal elections. This has nothing to do with county, state, or federal elections. We don't have the authority to do that. This would just be for our own municipal elections. The scope of the feasibility study, at least what I would propose, is to do work on process design and process flow on all aspects of our municipal elections to understand how we could administer this as a city. Number two, do a detailed cost analysis, looking at all the parts of the election that would entail cost to see if there would also be cost savings over hiring Fulton County or another entity to administer our local elections. And again, why I wanted to talk about this is so that we could actually discuss it, make a decision, and then move forward one way or another. And again, this is only for a feasibility study. This is not saying we're going to do our own municipal elections. I think we need to do the work first to see, could we do it? And then would there be cost savings? So that's kind of my intent of when we said to bring it back up and look at it again today.
Okay. Steve, I don't know if you want to kind of recap a little where we are, and I'd like to also discuss what that process of a feasibility study would include and how we would go that, and then any questions or comments from council, and then I certainly want to open up to public comment.
I'd be happy to, Mayor. Just a brief history on this item. Back in July, in fact, specifically July 19th, the council was considering an IGA with Fulton County to administer our elections as we've done in the past. Staff at that point, because of some of the concerns that were raised by this body, was asked to conduct a feasibility study, which we did. We had 2 weeks. The time frame was tight. Fortunately, we had a lot of good support from members of the community. We were able to get a decent amount done in that 2 weeks. Some of the things that we identified and we brought back before that August 2nd meeting were some of the opportunities were our engaged and educated citizenry who were eager and I believe are still eager to assist. And we also felt, and again, this was the last election cycle, that voter turnout may be less than in other years and provide an opportunity for us to gain experience under less hectic circumstances. Some of the risks and concerns that were brought up during that meeting included while we do administer our own qualifying, absentee ballots can be applied for. This was early, as of August 16th. That did not give us enough time to be able to prepare for that cycle. Staff was unsure if we were going to be able to secure the legally required ballot boxes. And at that time, there appeared to be a supply issue. Also, as Councilmember Morrig stated, the city can only administer the municipal elections, which is our local races. We wouldn't have the ability to administer such items as T-Splosh County, state, or federal ballots. I don't have to go through all of these. There were issues with locations for early voting. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to co-locate, and that sums up most of the things that were brought up that day. All the rest that I have here were specific to the time frame that we had. So the 2 weeks, as we determined and we brought back before council, just simply wasn't enough time for us to conduct a thorough enough analysis for staff to recommend at that time that we administer our own elections for this past cycle. We brought it before council, and at the time, council was split as far as their feelings on whether to move forward with the IGA. It was voted in favor of the IGA, but staff was directed to conduct an analysis for the next election cycle. After some discussion, it was determined that in addition to staff, the feasibility study group would consist of 2 members from the community, 2 members from the council, and 2 members from staff. However, concerns regarding the potential polarization of the issue affecting the perceived legitimacy of the outcome began to surface amongst some members of council. I subsequently met with the mayor, mayor pro tem, and city attorney, and following that meeting, I reached out to council to share the concerns that were brought up, which brings us to where we are today.
Does anybody else have anything they want to say or ask a question, and then we'll get into public comment on this? I think, one concern I certainly support and did support and support looking at this, but the question that I have is to what extent there's a lot of questions that I think need to be answered first before we, want to dive in and put a lot of taxpayer money involved. So I think that's what we need to kind of discuss tonight, at what level and how we go. Paul?
Yeah, Joe, I think that's exactly it. And you may remember I put my hand up that night as well to join Councilmember Morrig on as a second member of council to be a part of that initial study. And I think you and Steve have captured, as Rick did too, the essence of this. It's really all we're asking for is some clear direction from council about the ability to go ahead and assess the feasibility of it. This is not a go, no go decision about the future elections at this point because we don't have all the answers. So I think a thorough investigation of what the costs are, how the process would work, what the community engagement would look like is absolutely a valuable discussion that we should have tonight, and hopefully get the right direction to go forward.
Okay. Yeah, because there's some moving pieces to it now. There's some state legislation that may happen, which, may help or may hurt. I know Fulton County's had a shakeup, so there may be some changes there too. So there's a lot of unanswered questions or to get a good direction on how we would do this. So that's certainly great for us to try to come up with a plan. If no one else has anything right this second, I'd be glad to listen to those that have come to speak. Tammy, if that's all
Sure,
right with
thank you, Mayor.
council, and then we can discuss this. Okay.
I'd like to first invite Nia Courtson to the podium, please.
Good evening. My name is Nia Corsten, and I reside at 550 Owens Farm Road, Milton, Georgia. Thank you for the opportunity to once again voice my concerns and opinions as it relates to the city of Milton running their own municipal elections. Last month, I discussed the visceral findings of the internal audit of the Fulton County elections. 9 concerning conclusions were found, and the most alarming being that purchase orders were received after invoices were paid and their budget exceeded over 200% of allocated funds. On November 1st, the AJC was quoted by myself stating, "Corsten is hopeful that we won't have the same problems that were experienced in the 2020 election," unquote. Apparently, I spoke too soon and gave too much credit to Fulton County. After volunteering as a poll watcher and being trained as employed as a poll worker, I was able to gain significant insight. The hours and days spent doing this makes me even more convinced that Milton needs to take over and run their own municipal elections. Unlike national and presidential elections, municipal elections typically experience a 10% voter turnout. Given this low turnout, one would think that these elections should be seamless. That couldn't be further from the truth. In my personal experience, the following are irregularities that I encountered. Fulton County mandated that all election workers wear the required Fulton Vote shirts. Despite ordering my T-shirt 3 weeks prior to the election day, only 2 of the 6 poll workers were provided a T-shirt, myself not included in the 2, albeit a minor issue, but a very simple one that could not even be fulfilled. At Monday's setup, the day prior to the election, the ballot marking devices, otherwise known as BMDs, and poll pads were not delivered as required. To make matters even worse, the poll pads were delivered to the poll manager's home the night before the election. Those poll pads were involved in 19 days of early voting and were not secured for hours that they were in the home of the poll manager. I am in no way implicating any nefarious activity by that poll manager that I worked with, but merely pointing out the lack of chain of custody and security that were involved in these machines. I was assigned to the Alpharetta Government Building right across the street. Once the BMDs were delivered, they sent 18 of those machines. This reflects a larger number than those provided in the presidential election. This is an obvious cost overage. There was no secrecy folder that was provided for provisional ballots, nor was there a contact person available for provisional voting. Lots of questions with no answers. The following forms were not provided until 1 p.m. on Election Day. Booth security verification form, poll pad recap sheet, scanning ballot box recap form, ballot recap sheet, and touchscreen recap sheet. All these forms were to be delivered and reconciled by law by 6 a.m. on the day of election. We were provided 5 poll pads, of which only 3 worked. My poll pad did not work for my very first voter. We needed to spoil their ballot 3 times before we decided it was a non-working poll pad. Thankfully, it wasn't myself. Our poll tech never showed up, nor did 2 other election workers. We were only provided with 1 surge protector. We needed to utilize the building's own surge protector in order to properly plug in the BMDs and poll pads. Because these machines were not delivered the day prior, we were scrambling to set up on time. Mind you, we were all there at 5 a.m. and the polls open at 7 a.m. Our internet router was to be turned off by the poll tech by 6 a.m. As previously mentioned, we did not have a poll tech. This became a moot point because the router never even worked. And finally, we kept receiving and had to turn away dozens of voters due to wrong precinct polling locations. Our poll manager called those locations where these voters were originally trying to vote, and it was discovered that the poll pads were providing wrong location information.
Time has
Some-
expired.
Thank you for your time.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Hopefully you're close to,
I was, but that was, the last one was voter suppression. They had to go to 4 different locations before their vote finally counted.
thank you very much. Can you please call the next speaker?
I'd like to invite Lisa Cawley to the podium, please.
My name is Lisa Cawley. I reside at 14680 Freemanville Road, Milton, Georgia. After attending the August council meeting, I revisited the cost estimation presented to council. After additional research, I've updated the information for the cost of the ballots and the ballot boxes. The Secretary of State's office suggested Milton contact American Security Cabinet Company for a quote on the ballot boxes. The cost for printed paper ballots is provided by Tattnall Ballot Solutions. Tattnall provided ballots for Fulton County this past election. The previous estimate from the city staff, the price of ballots were $1.12 each. The cost per ballot, according to Tattnall, is 37 cents per ballot. This cost estimation previously presented was calculated using the ballots cast for the November 2020 presidential election. The cost estimation to order ballots should be based on municipal election turnout only. According to Tattnall, each city places an order for paper ballots based on 20% of their total registered voters. Ordering more would be wasting money in ballots which would end up in the shredder. This past election, we had 3,686 ballots cast. The total registered voters is 28,606 as of March 2021. 20% would be around 5,700 ballots needed. At 37 cents would cost the city an estimated $2,117. When looking at the previous estimation of the cost of poll managers and poll workers, the hourly wage is higher compared to current hourly wages paid by Happy Faces for Fulton County. The hourly wages range from $13.65 for poll workers up to $20 to $25 for poll managers and or poll techs. The city can adjust the wages on their own to be comparable to what Fulton County pays their workers. Adjusting the wages to the current pay scale would save the city additional money. In regard to security, not every precinct currently has police officers. Further investigation would be needed to determine the criteria for officers at each precinct, their duration and role, especially since it's a municipal election and ballots would remain in the city and not transported out. Looking at building rental, all of the Milton precincts but one is in a school. There is only one precinct, which is a church. More information is needed to determine if the $7,000 cost is real, since there is no charge for elections held in the schools. Finally, we have the cost of the ballot boxes. This was the most glaring cost of all the estimations presented in August. The Secretary of State's office gave the city a guesstimation of ballot boxes between 6,000 and 10,000 each. This cost is inaccurate. The Secretary of State's office recommended the city reach out to the American Security Cabinet Company for a quote. After contacting the American Security Company in October and discussing the needs for the city, they provided a cost estimate for 7 ballot boxes custom-made for paper ballot elections and 1 early voting metal ballot drop box. The quote was dependent on the amount of historical early absentee ballots requested and cast for Milton municipal elections. The company determined Milton would need, at this time, Model 450, which holds hundreds of early voting absentee ballots, which is more than ample. The cost of this drop box is $12.56. A suggestion was made by Lee Combs of the Secretary of State's office to contact larger counties that can no longer use all of their drop boxes due to SB 202. She indicated they may be willing to donate a drop box. Therefore, that cost would be $0. For Election Day, the city would need 7 ballot boxes. The company said they could customize corrugated plastic or cardboard ballot boxes. The basic cost of the ballot boxes would be $16.95. The boxes would be secured with certified tamper-proof election tape. They suggested as an alternative, the city could have their own ballot boxes made or ordered elsewhere. Many cities use a wooden box and a lock and key. One of our Georgia cities has been using the same wooden ballot box for over 20 years for their municipal elections. Adjusting these two areas alone on the spreadsheet reduces the estimated cost for the Milton municipal elections from $120,000 to $50,000. Additional research would be needed to determine further reductions in cost. This is a tremendous savings from what we are currently charged by Fulton to administrate our elections. I'm asking City Council to agree to move forward in determining further savings and also determine the process for administrating our own municipal elections by paper ballot. 16 cities in Georgia have been using paper ballots for their elections. Therefore, we wouldn't need to recreate the wheel. There is a fiscal responsibility to the Milton taxpayer to move forward with this process if we can save any money at all. Thank you. I appreciate your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you. And if you'd please, I could ask everyone to please hold their applause. Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to invite Karen Dubin to the podium.
Okay.
please.
Karen Dubin, 200 Davis Glen Court. Since the first person that spoke, I just want to go over some of the differences from this year for the election that were new. Number one was provisional ballots when you came to a location to vote for Election Day. If you came to our precinct between the hours of 7 and 5 p.m. and you wanted to vote provisionally, your ballot did not count. We basically had to send people back to their precinct that they were normally in, as this was part of the SB 202 change. Honestly, I had 950 provisional ballots delivered in a big suitcase that I picked up on Sunday morning. Out of 950 provisional ballots, I used zero, none. 950 provisional ballots are provided and we use zero. So those 950 provisional ballots are being basically shredded. Now, Sunday morning, we pick up our equipment as a poll manager. This year it changed. You had to pick your location. So I chose the same location, which is the North Annex. My appointment was for 9 o'clock in the morning. I arrived at 9 o'clock. At 9:45, the truck nor the equipment from Fulton County was still not there. At 9:50, the truck pulled up, personnel got off, and nobody was organized. I mean, they were just bringing equipment in all over the place. So I didn't leave that location until about close to 11 o'clock. Now, just for all you to know, we as poll managers, we do not get compensated, not that it's, big thing, to go down there on a Sunday morning and pick up equipment, bags, and suitcases. I mean, but you would think Fulton County, after 2 prior elections, would have gotten this correct. That, in other words, you're assigning me a time, be there, have everything ready to go. No. Okay, not only was that the problem, the poll pads, which we vote off of, they weren't even there. They weren't ready. They promised me they would be delivered to Creekview Elementary by 3 p.m. on Monday morning. So on Monday afternoon at 3 p.m., I called the school. The poll pads were still not delivered to the school. I got an email from my coordinator, call your poll tech. Okay, I called the poll tech. He basically told me he waited 4 hours to get poll pads. I mean, 4 hours to get a poll pad? I just don't understand what they did for this prior election. So at 6 p.m., he met us at Creekview Elementary, where we set up the machines. This election, we got 20 BMDs, which we didn't even get 20 for a presidential election. We got 8, we got 16. And not only did we get 20, we are required to open all 20 of those BMDs open them all. So you have to understand, it's not just 16 or it's not just 8. We have to open all 20. So that was a big problem. Now I happen to be fortunate. For my precinct, I had a visit from Rob Pitts, our chairman of the commissioners. And he comes up and there were people around and he's walking around and he's looking, and I said to him, he goes, how's things going today? I said, fine. I said, do you want to hear about my complaints, about my problem going to the North Annex to pick up machines? He said, Nah, that's not really my concern. Really? It's not your concern? I mean, I'm just, okay. So then he proceeds to walk around. And then before he leaves, he goes, come here, I need to talk to you. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. I said, yes. He goes, how come only 2 of your people are wearing T-shirts? I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, seriously? I go, well, first of all, this person over here is an extra, extra large. You provided us with 3 mediums. So just to show you all, this is the T-shirt that Rob Pitts was concerned about that you're paying for and we need to wear now. I mean, honestly, I have to be really serious here. A T-shirt you're worried about and you're not worried about the processes and us picking up equipment to vote? I don't know. So him and his 2 people there, his 2 staff people, found out how many people didn't have T-shirts, wrote it down. I asked him, I said, are you coming back? Didn't say anything, and he left. I have to be honest here. This was the worst Fulton County election. It was worse than the presidential. Nobody was prepared. The processes, everything that they changed was bad. Even the end of the night, we went from 1 location to picking 7. The runners, at the end of the night, you have 2 runners that are assigned with your SD card. They didn't even go to the same location that I went to at the end of the night. So all in all, basically for
Time expired.
for this election, I had 429 people that personally voted in person. I don't understand where we're spending our money, and the fact that Rob Pitts is morally concerned about a black T-shirt is mind-boggling to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dubin. And I will ask the council, or the room, please, to, per our rules, to hold your applause or any comments. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Thomas Corrigan to the podium, Mayor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm at 5345 Cottage Farm Road. I live in Johns Creek.
And if you don't, please state your name for the record.
Thomas Corrigan.
Thank you.
So this is an exciting evening because it's not just the local residents that are interested in what you're pursuing, but obviously a lot of North Fulton. And the basis of how Milton came about, how Johns Creek came about, Sandy Springs, is local control. So just to give you an idea, Mayor-elect John Bradbury sent me a text and just, said the following, that he really interested and appreciative of the potential interest in Milton City Council investigating the feasibility and requirements of our sister cities, North Fulton, performing their own municipal elections. It'd be a tremendous benefit and service if you were able to perform such a study and share what you learned with Johns Creek, so we can better decide if running our own elections, municipal elections, makes sense for us as well. And if the process is not practical or the numbers don't make financial sense, then it'll be a moot point. However, if what you learn has merit, then perhaps our city might decide to join you, maybe others, forming a North Fulton Municipal Elections Consortium to achieve greater economies of scale and hopefully a better, more secure, more efficient municipal election for all of our respective residents. I guess what I would like to add to it is this is a great opportunity. The whole premise and the basis of a democratic republic is audience participation, the residents getting involved. And that's exactly what this would do. And if you see, just taking a heat check here behind me, this room was empty not that long ago. So there's a lot of interest as far as I'm concerned. And having more people involved is a good thing. It's a great thing. And having more transparency. And I'll tell you, with the boxes that you're talking for holding the actual ballots, you can go one step further. You have Girl Scout troops, you have Boy Scout troops, you have the Gold Award, you have the Eagle Scout Award. Imagine teaching them the importance of the Constitution, of the Declaration of Independence, the importance of integrity and quality and transparency of our election system, and having them create the boxes and having some ownership. It's the one thing about leadership that sometimes you may not remember. Allow some ownership of the residents and the public. It'll go forever. So I think this is a phenomenal opportunity. you can tweak it even better and make it so much better than what you're even just thinking about now. I applaud you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. If you could please call our next speaker. Tammy.
Mayor, I'd like to invite Bridget Thorne to the podium.
Hello, I'm Bridget Thorne. I'm from 1195 Seal Drive in Alpharetta. I'm a former 9-year precinct manager and poll technician. One of my precincts was MLO 6, Manning Oaks, just down the road here. Through my years as working with Fulton elections, I've seen gross incompetence and waste in staffing and election allocations, equipment allocations. There was unnecessary confusion caused by poor training and mountains of paperwork with no consistency. Fulton elections was a mess and just getting messier every year. I always tried to help by making suggestions and offering to help. Most of the time I was ignored. Elections management didn't have the capability to understand the problem. Their solution to problems seemed to be 1, send more equipment, 2, send more staff, 3, get there earlier. Their problem was that they needed better trained, qualified staff, but they relied on Happy Faces temp agency from DeKalb County. In the November election, I worked before the election as a poll tech for Dominion during LNA testing. You see, almost exactly 2 weeks before the election, Fulton County had to quarantine the warehouse staff, all except Dominion's Dominique Olamo, a Nigerian citizen, and a consultant from the Chicago-based elections group, Mike Prendergast. Dominion was running both warehouses unsupervised. According to Rick Barron, they did not know who they hired or how they hired. It was clear that Happy Faces and other temps they hired the week before I came had zero election experience, maybe a high school degree, 100% minority, and most lived out of county. Even some were from out of state. Several signed in but didn't show up. Many signed in but didn't work. There were no standard operating procedure. It was common things would get lost. It was so disorganized. Dominion is a software company, yet there were no computers anywhere for tracking things. They would tell you to be there at 8 a.m., but then Dominion would show up at 10 because they had to stay there the night before until 2 a.m. I would ask, what did you guys do at 2 a.m.? No one seemed to answer. I saw the improper handling of all the early voting ballots coming into the warehouse by Happy Faces temps. I saw Dominion, Dominique, and the elections group Mike Prendergast printing ballots on Sunday night before the election at 10 p.m. As a precinct manager, I was missing 400 absentee ballots in my precinct. Someone substituted sample ballots. I sent an email to my supervisor and 3 other supervisors. My emails were ignored. Instead, I was fired a couple weeks later. Richard Barron went on national TV and said he was investigating me instead of my concerns. Do you know that last year Dominion's total expenses for all services, equipment, and supplies was more than $9.3 million? Did you know having the 14 Dominion staff work our November and January elections was nearly $2 million? I've supplied you all with spreadsheets there at your desk. Look, they charge staff $2,000 a day, $5,000 for election day, $250 per hour for overtime. Dominion was given a blank check of our tax dollars. There was a financial internal audit, and 9 findings were found. And one of those, well, untimely payment of invoices, lack of standard operating procedures, lack of supporting documentation, see the spreadsheet, improper payment of services, inadequate departmental accountability and oversight, and financial transactions are just a few. The real world, anyone with such an audit would be immediately fired. This is the handling of our tax dollars. Finding 4, $1.9 million amount was for only 14 Dominion staffers. It did not include the 50 to 60 Happy Face workers and the poll techs like me. That came out of a $7.7 million contract that Fulton just recently renewed. Please note that only $24 million of the expenses was shown to the auditor out of $44 million that was spent last year. Happy Faces expenditures were not turned over. And to find out that if you do a UCC search of Happy Faces, Secretary of State, on the Secretary of State website, Stacey Abrams' company is linked to it, to Happy Faces, her Now account. She co-founded this company and part owns. She has 16%. So with the purse string connection to Happy Faces, it jeopardizes the integrity of the Fulton County elections. For the sake of proper use of our tax dollars, efficiency in running our elections, rebuilding trust, faith, integrity in the election process.
Time expired.
And securing our vote, I strongly encourage you to bring the polls home and run them by stakeholders in the community. The people who cast the vote decide nothing. The people who count the vote decide everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Tammy, if you please call the next speaker.
I'd like to welcome Mr. Rick Fossier to the podium, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Rick Fossier. I live just up the road in Triple Crown at 14087 Triple Crown Drive. I've lived in this community for 14 years. I don't know any of the people that just spoke. I will not take 5 minutes because you've heard, I would be just absolutely flabbergasted. I couldn't believe if there was a decision made to not pursue this. So I am here just to support the feasibility study. Encourage you all to take in consideration what you just heard from these very prepared citizens. So thanks for what you do, for your service. I appreciate you guys, and I'll keep my eye on this. So thank you.
Thank you. Tammy, if you please call the next speaker.
Welcome Chuck Parrish to the podium, please.
Good evening. My name is Chuck Parrish. I live at 11175 Willowwood Drive in Roswell, Georgia. My professional background is in enterprise software, process automation, and data analytics for many of the world's largest telecommunications providers. More specifically to the topic tonight, I've been actively and deeply involved in the last 3 municipal elections in Roswell on a volunteer basis. I specialize in the data aspects of the elections, campaigning such as voter rolls, voting history, and demographics as it relates to campaigns to predict voter outcomes. All data I use is publicly sourced information, and I am purely a volunteer for candidates that I support. Let me establish a couple of basic principles I assume we all agree on. First, every elected official and every citizen voting should want a fair and accurate voting process where both voter and election integrity are paramount above everything. Second, all vendors providing a service to an organization should be required to continuously earn the right to be paid to provide that service. When I heard Milton was contemplating performing the analysis to take on your own elections, I wanted to come and encourage you to proceed by sharing my firsthand experience in the recent election. First, a quick background because everybody may not be familiar with some of the details. What I'm going to talk to you about is what happens on the back end, not so much what happens on the front end, but the results and the systems that are supporting it. So none of the information here reveals how voters vote, by the way, only that people voted. That's the only thing that gets exposed in this process. During the early voting period, a detailed file is posted every day on the Secretary of State website, listing every person who voted that day, encoded with information about whether they voted with mail-in or in-person early voting. Every night during the early voting period, the Secretary of State posted this file like clockwork between about 9:10 and 9:25 p.m. every night, literally within hours of the polls closing that day. For campaign purposes, this is highly useful information to understand voter turnout, where people are at, to stop campaigning to people who've already voted and things of that nature. So it's super useful. Fast forward to post November 2nd, 2021 election. The election results are published. We all know who won. But 3 days later, the voter history files are still not published to show who were the people who actually voted. The history files only contain the early voting details, nothing for the November 2nd election day in-person voters. So on November the 5th, I called the Secretary of State's office to understand what the holdup was. I received a call back from the Elections and Data Systems Manager on Monday, November the 8th, nearly a week after the election. The Secretary of State office informed me that Friday, November 5th was the deadline for all counties to submit their voter history information. All 100 plus counties statewide, except for one, had submitted their information on time. Guess which county did not submit by the deadline? none other than Fulton County.
Please hold your comments in the audience.
So I asked the Secretary of State office, why did it go like clockwork every day during early voting? But on election day, it turned into a mess. And the answer was, during early voting, the Secretary of State systems are running that every day. During day of voting, Fulton County runs that. Therefore, there's the source of the problem. To finish the story, Fulton County trickled in detailed voter data piece by piece between November 8th and finally provided complete information for the Roswell election on Friday, November the 12th, a full 10 days after the original election and a full 1.5 weeks into a 4-week runoff campaign where this information was urgently needed.
1 minute.
It raises questions. Why did Fulton County delay the election day voter information for so long? Why is Fulton the only county to delay dissemination of detailed voter information in the entire state? What system or personnel issues would cause such a delay? The Secretary of State office was able to take voter information being submitted from anywhere in Fulton County and synthesize it each day of early voting and deliver it within a couple hours. Based on this experience, I encourage you to take control of your own destiny where possible. Do the study to determine the best way to deliver Milton municipal elections cost effectively and with the highest levels of trust and integrity. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Tammy, if you please call the next
Mayor, I'd like to
speaker.
invite
Please ask to hold the applause.
Cleo Stewart, please, to the podium.
Hello. Cleo Stewart. I live at 1355 Murdoch Road in Marietta. And with all that we've already heard from these very prepared citizens, I'm coming from a different county, but I believe that with all of the concerns that have been raised on the election process in general, I really think that many people are going to be in favor of local communities managing as much of the process available to them as possible. And for that reason, I'm here to speak for Milton. I think that in business, when we look at business, we're all held to systems, processes, checks and balances. That's just the way it works. And the same thought should be applied to elections. I think that simplifying and streamlining the process wherever possible is the objective. And I think there's been way too many complications and way too many layers. Paper ballots managed by limited layers of control outside of local involvement will result in a high level of vote integrity and less chance for error and data breach. This is important regardless of the party affiliation as well. I think it's been stated many times that it doesn't really matter which party, it matters that your votes count. And I think that is the key thing here. And so I'm believing, my bet is that the costs associated in managing the Milton municipal election process will be much less than the costs associated accommodating Fulton County requirements. I mean, that whole thing seems unacceptable in general, and the general population. If you put this out there like that, I don't see why. You guys could be leaders, and that's how I'm looking at it. So I'm closing and asking that the council members here consider the viability of the request, and that was that they support the first step of the feasibility study going forward, and show leadership with your decision to these other communities that are watching you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tammy, if you please
Mayor, I'd
call
like
next.
to invite Edgar Rolando Almazan to the podium, please.
Thank you, and you pronounced it perfectly. Thank you. Mayor and council, thank you for this time. Reside at 275 Birchwood Drive. That's in Clarksville. It's not near here, but we are watching. We're here to learn what you all are doing, and we want to encourage you to complete the feasibility study so we can see how to better manage the assets and the resources of our people. Not long
Sorry to
ago,
disrupt you. If you wouldn't mind just stating your name on the
I'm sorry,
record.
Edgar Rolando Almazan. Yep. And not long ago, I went to McDonald's to get a cup of coffee and a biscuit. And McDonald's, by the way, has great coffee. Okay, I roast my own beans, my own coffee, so I know this. So I got my biscuit, and a young lady handed me my coffee, and very excited about it. And I asked, "Can I get a couple of napkins, please?" And she said, sure enough, she grabbed a wad of napkins and gave them to me. And I looked at him, and I looked at my wife, and I said, "Wow, I'm not going to make that big a mess." But I thought to myself, I can't give it back. And it made me think. You know, those that don't own, those that don't have any buy-in, those that don't own the resources, no ownership, they don't really care. And so when you look at what you all are looking to do, there's no better way to manage the resources of the people you're representing, because they're ours, they're yours. Somebody that is not, doesn't own them, they don't really care. And it's just a small way, but is nevertheless the truth that if there is, if it doesn't come, if your own people aren't managing the resources, they are going to be, as you've already heard, wasted. So remember that. And those napkins, you know, people that don't, I owned a restaurant. The cost of goods will kill you. And so when you look at somebody like that, then they don't have any stake in it. So they'll give you as many as you want. 500 packs of ketchup. You want it, you go. So I just want to encourage you. Thank you and we're watching as residents of other counties how you manage it so we can learn from you. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's all.
Tammy, if you'd please call the next speaker.
I'd like to invite Candy Muldowney to the podium, please.
Good evening. I'm Candy Muldowney of 3325 Kentworth Lane in Milton. I am in support of the City of Milton conducting their own municipal elections. This would give us local control, vote integrity, and substantial cost savings. The very reason we became our own city was to gain independence from a much larger bureaucracy and to control our local municipal needs. Fulton County is the very definition of that large, wasteful bureaucracy, and the exorbitant fees they have charged us in this last election, as well as the runoff, which exemplifies this. Many polling locations were overstaffed with both personnel and an abundance of expensive equipment. I understand Fulton County is still trying to confirm a large portion of the voter IDs from this most recent election. I believe Milton can do a better job performing this in-house. I strongly encourage the City Council to study this matter. Thanks.
Thank you. Tammy, if you'd please call the next speaker.
Thank you, Mayor. This speaker is in attendance, but asked that I read this comment. It's Tony Shepard, residing at 710 Nettlebrook Lane, Milton, Georgia. We need to take local control of our elections to ensure the integrity and accuracy of paper and tabulator ballot methods. We need to restore the integrity of the voting process, which has been destroyed by Fulton County. Cost savings, security, and mitigation of chain of custody concerns would be realized. Milton should want to address this nonpartisan concern, like 16 other cities in Georgia have already done, to ensure all votes are accurately counted. It's abundantly clear that the City of Milton should give serious consideration to administering our own local elections. Let's keep Milton local. Next, Mayor would like to invite Julie Adams to the podium.
Hi, my name is Julie Adams, and I'm at 5580 Chemenda V in Sandy Springs. So the reason that I'm here today is for this municipal election, I managed over 30 poll watchers here in Fulton County. My goal was to see if after a year of kind of being beaten up, if Fulton County was running their elections better. I also wanted to see if they were observing SB 202 laws. You'll be shocked at my findings. They weren't on either case. The first day of early voting, a poll manager told me that she would not prevent any single person from dropping hundreds of ballots into the drop box. I asked the question, if I go out in your neighborhood here and knock on doors and ask people for if they have an absentee ballot, if I can help them fill it out, collect 200 of them, walk in here and explain to you what I just did, are you going to let me put the ballots in the drop box? And she said, sure. She said, we err on the side of the voters, which was awesome. I also had, on 3 different occasions, I had a ballot marking device In a polling location, you add up all the numbers of the ballot marking devices, the DMBs, and you add up that number and you add up the number of the scanners. On 3 occasions, the scanner numbers were higher than the BMD numbers. I have asked everyone I know that knows a lot more about elections how this could happen. Nobody has an answer for me. As you probably all know, from Atlanta north, including here in Milton, a ridiculous number of voters were turned away on election day for being at the wrong precinct. I have reported, here at Milton Library that it was by one of my poll watchers that it was 50% of voters. At Fulton County Annex, the poll watchers counted. After they realized they had a problem, they started counting. 214 people were turned away from voting to go to another location. They had 205 people cast ballots at their location. It was just ridiculous. 2 of the poll managers in North Fulton County were asked the day before Election Day to be poll managers. Neither one of them had any poll experience. They were given 3 hours training. I spent several hours until 10:30 at night with one of these poll managers trying to talk him into not locking the doors and getting everybody to leave and leaving the ballots and everything where it was. I mean, it was unbelievable. We had many other things. One of the locations was asking every voter if they were a Republican or a Democrat. I walked in and explained to the poll manager that he couldn't do that. We had so many issues. One voter was allowed to give a digital picture on their phone of their driver's license to vote. One young voter near Georgia Tech was not asked for an ID that he was holding in his hand, by the way. He wasn't asked to see it.
1 minute.
We had poll managers and poll workers using personal laptops in precincts while the polls were open. And the biggest problem that we had, many others, but the ballot drop box, Fulton County is ignoring SB 202. They have chain of custody command or forms, and they were supposed to fill these out, have 2 couriers come every night to pick up, to open the box with the poll workers present, and lots of chain of custody. They didn't start until 5 days after early voting started. And it appears to me, because I was at 4 different locations, that they were filling out these chain of custody forms after the fact, because no one showed up those 4 or 5 nights. I was there. They said they filled out the forms like they were there and checked it out.
Expired.
I watched one of the poll managers and a poll worker and 2 couriers fill out these chain of custody forms for the last 2 days by the urging of Fulton County Elections Department. So they were filling them out, after the fact. I've got a lot more, but that's it.
I respectfully
I think you
ask for
guys
time.
should consider taking it in-house and let your residents.
Thank you very much. Amy, if you please call the next speaker.
I'd like to invite Elizabeth Engler, I believe, to the podium. Did I say that right? I'm sorry if I.
Thank you. Thank you so much for letting me to voice my concerns and opinions. My name is Elizabeth Engler, and I live at 345 Majestic Cove in Milton. And I had a question for you, because I did this today. Does anybody want to take a guess at the cost per vote for the election that was just a couple weeks ago? Anybody? It's $23. That's what Fulton County was getting. And this is based on the $84,000 that they are charging us and the 3,600 roughly votes that were cast. And with the runoff, the grand total will be about $154,000 that Fulton County is going to charge us. This was according to an Aspen Press article that was written on November 3rd. Fulton County will continue to take advantage of the city of Milton unless we come up with a solution. And I think Lisa Colley has done a really good study to give us an indication that we can and are able to do this ourselves. It's for this reason and all the other integrity issues that have been raised that I 100% support the efforts of you all to do a feasibility study and establish the committee to evaluate managing our own elections and eliminate any responsibility or involvement of Fulton County in these elections. I not only support the task force, but I also support an implementation of a plan to manage our own election process. I am very confident in our citizens, as we witnessed here today, that we can handle with integrity sorry, I lost my place. But anyways, you know where I'm going with this. I really am 100% in support of doing this feasibility study. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Tammy, if you please call the next speaker.
Cynthia Qualtire, I invite you to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Qualtier, and I live at 350 Majestic Cove. After hearing everyone this evening, I please ask you to conduct the feasibility study with full transparency. We ask that you share the name of any consultant and the name of any firm that is used for this study with all the citizens that are here. The last time I appeared before the City Council, I voiced my grave concerns with Fulton County managing our municipal elections. At that point, I decided to take action and learn for myself, and I volunteered to be a poll manager for the Fulton County municipal elections. I was a precinct manager for Roswell RW03A that I was assigned to. Fulton County does not manage elections. They hire subcontractors to do it for them. And in my opinion, they do a very poor, sloppy job. As the new participant in the election process management, I didn't know what I did need to know, particularly key processes and items for election day. I attended a 4-hour crash course in the Dominion system, or should I say systems, that are fraught with potential loopholes and gaps that could lead to potential integrity issues. I went to pick up my materials on Sunday afternoon at the same North Fulton Annex, and I was told my materials would not be available to me. I was given partial materials, but I was missing some very key components. They said they would drop them off to me Tuesday morning at the precinct. Unfortunately, nothing was dropped off. I was also told on Monday I would be called to meet the voting machines drop-off team at the polling church. No one ever called me. The church actually called me because I went ahead of time, met with the church and said, I will be the poll manager. Please keep me informed of anything that's going on. The materials and the computer drop-offs are all managed by, not Fulton County, subcontractors. Monday night, the 2 assistant managers emailed me and said, oh, I won't be able to make it. I won't be there tomorrow. Good luck. I hadn't even started and I was already behind. I called Fulton County and they had no backup resources to help me, no backup plan. Tuesday morning, showing up at 5 a.m., myself and 6 others, all brand new volunteers. None of us had ever worked an election. We had a brand new precinct. I quickly appointed 2 people, assistant managers, and we did our best to fumble through the setup of the machines and write down chain of custody numbers from the logs. Unfortunately, none of my chain of custody forms arrived, so we created our own manual forms on pieces of white paper that I brought with me with pen and paper. I made up my own manual forms, We were able to get our precinct up and operational by 7 a.m. and fortunately, none of the voters noticed anything amiss. We had several persons come from other precincts because they were told to, and they were sent to the wrong precinct. A few of these people got very, very upset because they were completely given the runaround on how to vote. And they felt that because they were of a certain party, they were being given the runaround. I will say the volunteers that I had working with me were wonderful people, very dedicated, all Fulton County residents. The day started at 5 a.m. and we ended at 10 p.m. That's a really long day for volunteers. Many of our poll workers were older citizens, and they were very, very tired by the end of the day. Whatever we do, I please recommend that we have breaks, maybe change people to in and out, because you're looking at a 14-hour day for these people and their volunteering. The process in place for Fulton County is complicated, difficult to manage, all the forms they require, no plans for backups, and, okay, thank you. The manager at the election board I worked with was a very nice person, but she had, I don't know, I think something like 15 precincts to manage. She did her best, but she was hard to get a hold of. She couldn't call me back when I needed her. Please do not use Fulton County for our municipal elections. I recommend money be allocated to managing our own and get the Milton citizens engaged. We want to be a part of this process. Do not use subcontractors, and please do not use subcontractors for this feasibility study. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy, if you please, I'll tell you what, if everybody will hold their applause, when everybody's through speaking, I'll let you have one big applause. Tammy, if you please call the next speaker.
Janice Johnston, I'd like to invite you to the podium.
Hi, my name is Dr. Janice Johnston. I live at 229 Londonderry in Sandy Springs, but I might move to Milton. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd like to give my support to accepting the proposal for a feasibility study regarding the conduct of Milton municipal elections by the city of Milton. In order to have free and fair elections, one must meet certain requirements: secret ballot, protected, verifiable, auditable ballots, local control of elections, election operations that are accurate, efficient, and trusted, transparent election conduct, prevention of cheating, fraud, and identity theft, rigorous avoidance of partisan or unequal election conduct, and accurate voter rolls. Sadly, the ability and/or desire of Fulton County elections does not meet these requirements. Fulton County elections had every opportunity and all the money in the world to improve, correct, and implement these deficiencies. However, in the most recent smaller municipal elections of November 2nd, 2021, it could not perform. My personal experience in this election involved participating in as many activities of the Fulton County election operations that I could. This included Fulton County Election Board meetings, Fulton Board of Commissioners meetings, agreeing to serve on a Fulton election task force, recruiting poll workers, poll watchers, and poll techs, participating in election training by Fulton County election staff and Happy Faces Temp Agency, observing logic and accuracy testing, working in the polls for all early voting and on election day, and currently reviewing Fulton County's election procedures and results. My conclusions: Fulton County elections has challenges with election administration. Hiring policy and procedures are partisan, chaotic, last minute, poorly implemented, and compromised. Training programs are disorganized, inconsistent, and frightfully incomplete. Election administration is a logistics nightmare, has equipment overload, and struggles with database and compliance issues. Fulton County elections compliance issues abound. Staff is poorly hired, poorly trained, and poorly led in following election policies, guidelines, and most importantly, election law. It does not build confidence when your supervisor tells you they do not care what Georgia law states. These problems led to incorrect communication of election procedures, loss of voter privacy, violations of election law, and fraud. Fulton County elections continue to be non-transparent and restrict meaningful observation. Fulton County elections approach problems by throwing taxpayer money around to appear that they're trying to do little to improve process and outcomes. Wasteful proposals, budgets to hire expensive partisan consultants and inexperienced, unqualified staffers that sit around and play on their mobile devices is not good use of taxpayer dollars. Elected officials that meddle and interfere in elections and brag about delivering the vote for their party should be a strong message to you that the sanctity of elections for your municipality need to be protected and kept as close to home as possible. Therefore, I encourage this council to consider a feasibility study to conduct your own municipal elections. You have a great opportunity to protect the vote, restore voter confidence, and guard the taxpayer's dollar. Good luck.
Thank you. Tammy, if you please call the next speaker.
Mr. Jeff Albert, I'd like to invite you to the podium.
You pronounced that right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for the invitation to be able to speak. I'm going to spare you the details, but I want to let you know that I'm representing the thoughts and attitudes of thousands of people in this community.
Excuse me, Mr. Albert, if you would please, just your name and address for the record.
Okay, sorry. Jeff Albert, 15055 Thompson Road.
You did pronounce that correctly.
Thank you. Thank you. I lived there 22 years, I should. So I'm representing the thoughts and attitudes of neighbors, friends, and professionals that I work with. As our representatives, we are asking you and encouraging you to conduct a feasibility study for Milton to manage our own municipal elections. This last election opened my eyes and thousands of other people in this community, which are represented here in this room tonight. I now realize how corrupt our election system is. The politicians I once applauded are embedded in their own interests and have sold us out. All of us in this room are ready to take action and get involved to get this country back on track. We are starting with our local government here tonight. Let's review the hierarchy of this world. God created man, man created society, and society created government. This means that elected officials are subject to us, we the people. Somehow,
Wait till the end,
to do that
please.
at the end. Somehow it's gotten flipped, and now we're subject to government. Electing officials don't give them the consent to do what they want to do. We elect you to carry out our desires. Numerous advantages have been presented tonight regarding conducting a feasibility study and having Milton manage their own local elections. I can't think of any disadvantage to this. So do the right thing and set a great precedence for other cities in Georgia and offer us all a fair election. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy, if you please call the next speaker.
Sarah Pedro, I'd like to invite you to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Pedro, and I reside at 330 Majestic Cove, Milton, Georgia. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. And I think maybe I should propose that we secede from Fulton County based on all the comments, but that's not what I'm going to talk about. I just came here to basically support the same thing everybody else is. I'm a Milton resident and legally registered voter. I'd like to express my support for this feasibility study and us to look at managing our own elections and pulling it out of the responsibility of Fulton County. We know they don't have the best reputation in regards to election management, and I feel it's only right to remove them from the administration of our municipal elections. I'm very sure that Milton can do it both efficiently and economically. There are so many people that have poured their hours and their time into this. You can see that people really care. I do want to say that in spite of the media's attempts to whitewash the allegations of the unlawful conduct and the election activities levied at Fulton County, any thoughtful person can look at all the mounting evidence from previous elections that they're either very grossly negligent and incompetent, or they're trying to pull something over on us. I believe that the reason we didn't have the widespread issues, and I notice I said widespread issues in this most recent election, because I've heard from multiple people in the community that did work the polls and said that there were a lot of issues, but this was a relatively small election with just the one contested position. But I believe we didn't have the magnitude of it just because all of the people that stepped up in this last election and the concerned citizens. So obviously this is a very important issue that people care about, and we want to take this into our own purview and out of Fulton County's responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy, if you please call the next speaker.
Suzanne Hubbard, you're invited to the podium.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Hubbard. I live at 14250 Freemanville Road. I have lived here for over 20 years, and I've watched the area grow and change quite a bit. This is my home. So I decided this year I needed to get more involved, and I was a poll watcher in this last municipal election. I was very surprised by how much equipment and staff that there was, not to mention how many locations for such a small election. I was a poll watcher at the Milton Library, and there was another location right across the street. So many people came to vote that were turned away. And after being told that they were at the wrong location, it was frustrating to see over half the people that showed up were turned away. Some that came had a hard time getting there. So I know you have to guess that a lot of them did not make it to the next location, so we lost votes. That was very frustrating to me. Only 391 people voted at the library that day, and there was twice that many people that showed up. There was never more than a few minutes to wait, even when multiple people came at the same time. The rest of the day, there was long periods with no voters. I just felt my tax dollars were being wasted on so much extra staff and equipment. This was the first time that I was a poll watcher, but I felt that costs could definitely be reduced with local control, with people more vested in everyone's votes, counting, and more efficiency. I am in total support of a feasibility study to be done for Milton to handle their own elections. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tammy, can you please call the next speaker?
Karen Dean, you're invited to the podium.
My name is Karen Deed, and I live at 14720 Creek Club Drive in Milton, Georgia. I decided to become a poll clerk to get involved, and I was hired. The interview process, I was told that someone would call on a Tuesday, and they did. Happy Faces called. And then over the next 3 weeks, every so often, somebody would call and ask me questions or ask me to fill out this form, and then I would do it. And then eventually, I didn't hear anything, and then the supervisor called and said, "Oh, you're not done." And I had to fill out Homeland Security forms, and I had to take these tests, and I had to do, and I said, "Everybody has to do this?" And they don't have any questions. I had trouble answering some of the questions. I would call them and say, "I'm working on this form. What am I supposed to do? I have a college degree. I'm not stupid. I can do this. And they said, you're the only person who's ever had questions, which made me wonder, am I the only one being given these forms? So I have no idea. Then when I talked to the original person again, she said, oh, where would you like to work? I said, where can I work? And she said, well, where do you live? I said, Milton. Well, you could go to the library. And I said, fine, I'll do that. That would be wonderful. A couple days later, somebody else called me from Happy Faces and said, tomorrow, can you go and be sworn in? We need you to go to the warehouse and be sworn in. And then they'll be followed by 2 days of training. And I said, well, how long will this take tomorrow? Because I have a prior commitment and I can't get out of it. And he said, oh, 10 minutes to an hour. You go in, they swear you in, and you leave. So, and then we were told we had to dress. So I put on professionally. So I go down there and I walk in, and there's a room full of people, and there's an instructor at the front, and they're all going through slides. And I stood there, and when she saw me, and she went to the back and turned it off and said, can I help you? And I said, I was told by Happy Faces to come here today to be sworn in. And she said, oh, I love Happy Faces. She said, no, it was a 4-hour training from 9 to 1, but we'll stop. You can swear in, and then you can go. So that's what we did. I was so highly embarrassed. The next day we had training from 9 to 4, and then again the next day. People had to ask for the sign-in sheet. And then later on, when we had started working, I happened to be very lucky and worked with a lot of, almost everybody had been working for years. And they said, oh, you have to, do you want to print out your timesheets and see this and see that? And it's like, that would be good. And then they noticed they hadn't been paid for training. Everybody who went to the warehouse had not been paid for training. And they said, oh, we can't find the sheets. So until we find the sheets, you can't get paid. So, and then if they call or you see there's a number on your phone, you don't know who it is, it's probably Happy Faces, but they don't leave a message. And if you return the call, nobody answers. I only learned how to sign in and out every day by the lady sitting next to me. She told me, oh, there's an app, and this is what you have to do, and this is how you do it. And I still haven't gotten a pay stub for the 3 weeks of early voting that I worked. And I was told you have to call Happy Faces, then they'll give you one if you ask them for it. Set up, the first was on a Monday. They said, be there at 10, showed up. By 12 o'clock, nobody had come. The manager called somebody, said, no, it'll be tomorrow. We came back on Tuesday, nobody came. They said, oh, it's going to be Thursday.
1 minute.
Okay, so, I mean, this is just to give you an idea. They gave us a bat phone for any questions. Only problem is you couldn't call out on the phone. So that didn't work. We don't need 3 weeks of early or 18 days for early voting for municipal elections. We were at work 10 hours a day. The first week we had about 60 people a day. The first Sunday we had 28 people. I read 4 books while I was working because nobody was there and the library was down the hall. The second week we had about 70 votes a day, voters, and the very last day we had 559 voters. Overall, we had, this was at the Milton Library, a little over 2,000 voters. That's it. And if you think about it, it wasn't that long ago that we had 1 day to vote. We don't need 3 weeks for a municipal election, and that would save us a great deal of money right there. Plus a lot of wasted time.
Expired.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy?
Mayor Judy Birds, I'd like to invite to the podium.
Okay.
Judy Birds, 1165 Bream Drive here in Milton, Georgia. After speaking at a previous city council meeting on whether we should conduct our own elections, I thought we needed to understand what this entailed, what was involved. So I signed up and served for approximately 22 10-plus hour days in early voting as an assistant manager at Milton Library, and then for a 15-hour day on the day of elections on November 30th as a poll technician at a different role at a different Atlanta City location. I strongly urge council to work on the feasibility study based on my experience. The state designs the process, the systems, dozens of paperwork forms that have to be filled with handwritten numbers and various deadlines. There are many manual interventions. Go to this system, go to this system, go to this system, come back to this system. Oh, have 3 people check that you went back to that system. There is a great reliance on the experience of the poll workers, the assistant managers, and the managers to make this process work. I've worked for decades as an international consultant to large corporations in process and systems design and implementation. The extensive manual work, the paperwork, the cross-checks are an indication that the process can have problems. Unfortunately, problems like this do not scale well. Hence why we probably see a focus on the largest county in Georgia with these problems. Sometimes the resolution involved dispatches from downtown or going downtown to retrieve equipment. The city of Milton will not have the problems brought upon by the scale and these distance required, but we must prepare. The need to understand what the many questions that need to be asked and to assess the cost and feasibility should begin post haste. It's complicated. There's state laws, there's state systems. There's a little Fulton County tool that makes things easier. Do we want to use that? And I don't even begin to understand all the processes behind the scenes in preparation of the poll pads and the preparation of absentee ballots, as well as the counting afterwards. I stand ready to assist in this effort, but urge you to begin immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Tammy.
Mayor, I would like to read one of a attendee here. It's Kevin Muldowney at 3325 Kentworth in Milton. I am in support of Milton running their own elections. Having Fulton County run our election is inefficient and very costly. As the founders of the city of Milton declared, we need local control of our affairs. It is abundantly clear that Milton should formally study the administering of our own elections. I now would like to invite Molly Reed to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Molly Reed. I reside at 11523 Valmont Lane, Milton, Georgia. You'll be happy to know I'm going to keep this short and sweet because all of the fellow residents and Georgia citizens have already said everything we need to know. I do support the feasibility study and keeping elections local here in Milton and get it out of Fulton County. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Tammy.
Lee Hills.
Mayor and Council, I'm Lee Hills, 11280 West Road, Roswell. I am your neighbor, and I'm your friend, and I'm your ally. I'm coming to you to appeal that you please do this feasibility study. The last 5 years, I have voted in a national election, and my eyebrow went up. I can't do it by myself, so I'll do this. The previous election, when we had hanging chads, and that was when I woke up. I started paying attention to the elections, what was going on, more so what was not going on, and that we needed to get a hold of what was supposed to be going on as citizens. I've continued to follow that. 5 years ago, I was suspicious of what went on a national level. And then, of course, in 2020, watching all that unfold really brought more concern to me about how our elections were run. Of course, in between that, we've had municipal and other Senate and congressional elections, but there have been continued questions and concerns from residents. I have continued to ask other residents, friends, neighbors, people in Roswell, in Milton. I'm so happy to hear from folks from Sandy Springs, from Johns Creek, and Alpharetta tonight too, as well as outside counties. This is a big deal. We've got to get a hold of this. Ms. Stewart from Marietta made a great point. We have an opportunity to be leaders here. I take this so seriously that I put my money where my mouth is, and I ran for city council in Roswell and just recently ran and won. And I look forward to partnering with you on this effort. I was already in conversations with Mayor Henry this summer, attended your meetings before, and I'm committed to working with you as a resident and an ally on getting this handled. There's no excuse in having so many people concerned with the validity of our elections and canvassing, which is door knocking. Too many people said to me, is my vote even going to count? And I said, well, it won't count if you don't go. So you have to go vote. But the number of people that said that to me gave me even more pause. So I want you to know that I'm already actively moving forward with this, and our newly elected and sitting council members and new mayor. There's a new sheriff and deputies in town over in Roswell, and we are here to serve with you and help you. That's my pledge. I'll let the others stand for themselves, but I want you to know we will be doing the same lockstep, and you have my pledge to you that I will be working with you and all of the folks that are beside me, not behind me. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, and also congratulations or condolences. I'm not sure yet. You'll let us know next year, but thank you. Tammy, if you'll please call the next speaker.
It's Kristen Muzinich.
Good evening, Kirsten Muzinich, 16720 Quayside Drive, Milton. I'll make it short and sweet also. Good evening, City Council, and good evening, Mayor. I'm in favor of Milton running their own municipal elections and moving forward on a feasibility study, and I look forward to the wonderful community engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Tammy?
Sandra Burchart.
Thank you. My name is Sandra Burkhart. I live at 6110 Blackwater Trail, Sandy Springs, Georgia. And I'm really excited that you guys are going to start doing something about what has been going on in Fulton County. I have been privileged to attend some of the Fulton County Commissioners meetings, and they have been full of things that make me very unhappy. I have seen and heard things that are not true, being spoken as if they are true about fair elections, and I'm excited about this feasibility study, and I congratulate you, and I pray that we will continue to make this a fair election.
Okay, thank you. All right, Tammy, is there any more?
Mayor, I have a few that I need to read that
Okay.
was emailed. This would be from Jill Wright, located at 110 Hickory Mill Court. Good evening, City Council members and Mayor. I highly recommend the Milton City Council administer their own municipal elections to ensure election integrity and transparency for its taxpaying citizens and registered voters based on my personal experience as a poll watcher at the Milton Library. On December the 30th, 2020, I was a poll watcher at the Milton Library for the Senate runoff election. During that time, I was witness to corruption by the Fulton County poll workers. As poll watchers, you should have access to all rooms where poll workers are managing their polls and voters. For 4 hours, I watched the poll workers frequent meeting room B, which happened to be the window blocked with construction paper. When I asked for access to that room, the poll manager denied the access, then lied to me as to what was going on in this room. Once I finally gained access, I saw an 8-foot table stacked full of pristine, no-crease ballot boxes on the floor with shipping labels to downtown, more ballots stacked on the floor, and only one poll manager in the room. I submitted an affidavit with pictures to Fulton County Elections as they saw it as a concern, but nothing came of it. Since that day, I've participated in multiple Fulton County Commissioner and Board of Elections meetings, only to observe more corruption. In fact, the Fulton County Director of Elections, Richard Barron, just submitted his resignation after months of determination to stay in his role. If Milton wants elections integrity and transparency in their local elections, I strongly recommend cutting ties with Fulton County Elections. The next mayor is going to be from Jason Frazier, located at 485 Hardscrabble Road in Roswell. I've decided after the presidential election that I could not complain about how elections are conducted in Fulton County without doing my part to improve the process. That said, I joined the team and worked both the 2021 election as well as Election Day as a roaming poll tech. With that position, I spent time in Sandy Springs, Alpharetta, Johns Creek, and the Milton Library. Throughout that time, I saw a mountain of waste, inefficiencies, and inconsistencies across the board. I spent my career in engineering, manufacturing, process improvement roles, and finance, all of which made me simply shake my head and accept that large government operations with no accountability to the taxpayers will simply spend as much money as they can without regard for their waste. To be Milton specific, while I was at the Milton Library, they had 9 workers and averaged around 60 votes per day. That includes 6 laptops, 6 tablets, 6 printers, and library that had 9 workers and averaged around 60 votes. Associated equipment along with 10 ballots marking devices, each with their own printers and equipment and 2 scanners, not to mention an entire unique setup for Fairborn, which was never used a single time at any location I worked at. Many of the employees also worked 11-plus-hour days, so you can easily do the math and see that it could be slimmed down at least a bit for 60 votes per day. Now, to bring this waste home, I would want you all to know that I have helped set up the Milton Library last Sunday for the runoff election, and they have the exact same setup from a hardware standpoint. I believe that we'll have 8 or 9 employees working during the runoff election, and besides most of the people in this room voting. I can't imagine others will be voting on a percentage basis for a 1-seat runoff election happening near Thanksgiving. I truly hope you will choose to conduct a feasibility study and use your city taxpayer dollars more efficiently. Lucia Frazier, located at 485 Hardscrabble Road in Roswell. I strongly support Milton Council to approve doing a cost and feasibility study to perform its own municipal elections. I was a poll watcher for this year's election, both early voting and election day. All precincts had 10 to 12 BMDs and 8 to 12 workers for only 20 to 100 votes per day. This election could easily be run with 4 to 6 BMDs and 3 to 4 people at each precinct. The poll managers I talked to and disagreed with me on this point. In addition, 3 weeks early voting was not needed. 1 week or no early voting at all would suffice. Overall, the current process with Fulton County is very inefficient. The last is Lily Polzatek, 700 Richmond Glen Drive. As a resident of Milton, I would like to request that the city of Milton move forward in the endeavor of running our own election. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure everybody's got something to say. I first want to thank everybody for your time here and your comments. I think I could probably speak for everybody up here. We're all kind of preaching to the choir. And again, as I said early on, I don't think any of us we're all supportive of a feasibility study. I think the glaring thing, especially after hearing a lot of comments, and let's just call it the elephant in the room, is, we're not only Milton citizens, but we're Fulton County citizens, we're state of Georgia citizens, and we're United States citizens. And unfortunately, all of these things, I think it would be a no-brainer, even if the cost were more, if we could run our own elections to cover all our, not only just the municipality, but our state and federal and county elections. So personally, I think that's the big problem. Even if we were to run our own elections, that doesn't, all these concerns, that certainly doesn't appease those. So maybe at some point, one day there will be an opportunity to do something like that. But again, that's my comment is that's even doing this is a small step, but that's our big problem is the overall election process. But love to hear what council has to say. I'm going to do that later when we get the punch and cookies out. Anybody want to comment on this? Rick, want you?
Sure. I think we've heard from a lot of different people, including some of our sister cities. And again, this is a nonpartisan process. When we run municipal elections, you don't declare if you're Republican, Independent, or Democrat. These are people from our own community that we just get to choose between the person. You would think with a municipal election, there wouldn't be any complications. It would be easy to run through. We just heard from people who have actually invested time and worked the elections, the most recent municipal election, that there are many problems out there with Fulton County. For that reason, I guess I feel very strongly that we should do a feasibility study, and that would include process mapping. We know we already do the qualifications, so I would suggest we take this from after you've qualified. What's the next step? How do we handle absentee ballots? What's that process? just kind of map it all the way through. We need to do the work so we can actually see, can we do it? How can we streamline it? Again, this is a nonpartisan process. It's basically a voting process. How do we run our own elections? And I think we need to do the work so we can find out how we would do it. And at the same time, we're going to see where, when you do process mapping, where the cost, where people have to touch it. Today, using Fulton County, there are so many handoffs and issues with the chain of custody. Just even for municipal elections, it has to go downtown. It goes from the precincts or the poll places, then it goes to a drop-off place, then they're consolidated with all other cities, and then from there, it goes down to English Street, and then they start a process, which I don't know how they do that, where they tabulate our votes. I think we have a chance to actually do it better, and it sounds like there's interest in our sister cities, but I request that we do this. And in addition, I don't think this is something that we farm out and we get a consulting firm. This is something we've got a lot of experience, but I think we need to do a committee like we talked about before. But the time to get started, I'd urge us to actually get started sooner rather than later. 2023 sounds like a long time away, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done here, and I think we're capable and we can actually do it.
Anybody else? Joe?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit confused because I actually thought the council had given direction that we were going to explore this or do a feasibility study or something like that. But if there's still concerns about what our options are moving forward, if there are concerns related to the time or energy that it would take to do this, I think that there's ways for us to work around that. I can't believe there's any subject that, we would be scared of discussing in greater detail. And certainly based on all the comments that we got from our citizens tonight and people that live nearby, should prove that there's, nothing that should be off the table. The other thing that I would say is, we're replicating something that's already done by people. So I guarantee you it can be done. That's not the challenge, right? The challenge is, what do we think the benefits are and what do we think the goals of doing it ourselves are? Because it's not going to be easier necessarily for us to do it ourselves. We're going to have to be engaged. We're going to have to take on responsibility. We're going to have to do this stuff. What are the trade-offs? Well, maybe cost is a trade-off. But cost is one of those funny things. Are we willing to spend twice as much if the accuracy of the election goes up by a factor of 2? I would think that accuracy of elections is worth every bit of money that you want to throw at it. But we don't know. So that's why I'm thinking digging into this more detail is a good idea.
Okay, Laura?
I have a comment, and I couldn't agree more. I just, first of all, want to thank everyone that's come out tonight and your time. I just, with a feasibility study, would want to be sure that we set expectations. We don't have a magic wand here at City Hall. We have a very lean staff. And in my time on council, I've really come to understand how lean we are. So we don't have people in the back room waiting to run our municipal elections. So and I couldn't agree more on not using consultants. This is a hands-on issue, but we don't have that department here. So I would like to know more about, the degree of staff that's needed to do the feasibility study. Do we have the expertise on staff? Those are my questions and the amount of resources and funds that we are projecting to do the study and the time frame.
Okay. Paul?
Thanks, Joe. I also want to thank the community for coming out this evening from far and wide. We appreciate your time and investment in our city, hoping that we can be an example of what could happen if we choose to go forward and we deliver a successful path to legitimate elections. And I had said I made some of my sort of broad sweeping comments earlier, and the fact that I do support the feasibility study. I do understand the pause that we had for good reason, that even though we took some direction some time ago, that some of the unanswered questions that have come forward, I think we've gotten to a point of more clarity on some of the answers that were unresolved before. And I think when you listen to the community this evening, it would be irresponsible for us not to go forward with some scale of study to.
Jen, if you could please hold your applause. I think we're all talking and we're all on the same page here. So please hold your applause.
So I believe there's a time and place to lead, and I think this is an opportunity for Milton to be an example to others. It sounds like there are lots of willing participants to join this. As Rick has pointed out and others have spoken to, it's a nonpartisan process. We would intend to keep it that way. Everyone would be welcome to participate regardless of party affiliation, because there's not a party affiliation for a municipal election. I look forward to a vote being cast in favor of moving forward.
Peyton, have anything?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll just kind of just reiterate what everyone else said. I would like to see what a feasibility study is. It's kind of vague. It's kind of general. So I would kind of like to see what that's going to entail, and maybe that's the next steps. Two, I think also while we're working together, Councilmember-elect Hills said, I think the cities need to start working together along this. We're going to have 3 new mayors and a lot of new council members, I think, as we go along. And I don't want to rush this. We do have a couple years, but it shouldn't take us that long. So
I may make one comment too. I know we've talked about other cities, and the North Fulton cities did collaborate on this and look into it. The reason they decided not to was because the point I brought up about, they could only manage the municipal part, which I think we all agree. We'd love to be able to set up a system and be able to do all the elections. So I think that everybody's point, and Peyton just mentioned it, what I was going to say. I think the only question we have is, what is a feasibility study? And we need to get some detail on that. I'm going to, again, we're all worried, we want to spend our money and our staff time wisely. There's a lot of, like anything else, you start with a small group and we can come up with a report and a spreadsheet and, maybe build on what staff had already done. I know Councilmember Morick has, stepped up and Councilmember Moore too. So, I want to get council's feedback. Does a feasibility study start with a couple of staff members? I know Stacy, talked to Stacy and Tammy would help. If our council members, if we could put some stuff together, we've got plenty of community members that can give input to the council members and then bring something back to us that's at least fine-tuned enough to where, we can say, this really makes sense, or it's not, or we need a little bit more direction or a little more information. Is that something that you guys would be thinking about, Rick?
Yeah, I guess my comment, Joe, is we've kind of been doing that for 3 months, 3.5 months. We said we wanted to move forward. And I guess where I'm at right now is feasibility study, yes, it's a broad term. The reality is we need to start with what I had mentioned. Once somebody qualifies, that's where the process starts. You need to get into looking at the details, mapping it out. I think you need people that have expertise. And I'm not looking to overburden staff with this. I think we can put a framework, put it together, but I think we need to first say, we are going to do this. We're going to work on a process map. We're going to work on cost analysis. And then we had a framework that we had already talked about where we had 2 council members, we had 2 staff members that would work with us, and we had a couple of people from the community. We will probably need to engage more people from the community because we've got an unlimited resource of a lot of people that stepped up in the last election that they can tell us, as well as look at how did it work? What are the state requirements? What's the State Bill 202? But get into the detail. That's what you need to do. I'm willing to put my time into it. I think Councilman Moore is going to do the same thing. I think we've got some people from the community. And again, my goal would not to be to overburden where this becomes a full-time thing for staff. That's not what I'm suggesting, but I think we need to first say, we're going to do it, vote, and then let's get started on the process. And then we can start to go through the map. But I think we need to have a meeting to say, okay, we're going to do this process map. We're going to do the analysis. Let's talk about how we're going to start on that. Let's talk about how we're going to do that. But I don't want to keep talking about this, I guess is my view. I don't want to come back in another month and have another vote on this. So that's just kind of my feeling.
I'm going to go ahead and stop right now. On 3, everybody clap.
And the last thing, I want to say thank you for everybody who took their time to come out here, talk to council, listen. This is you're taking your evening. Some of you traveled far distance, and hopefully as we go forward, what comes out of this can be something that we can actually help and work with other cities. So thank you for your time and your comments.
Peyton.
Well, I think the Councilman Longoria's point, maybe the first easy step is talking with these other cities who actually have already probably gone through multiple studies and have gone through it, right?
If I could just adjust a step. I've talked to, and I don't want to speak for the other cities. I've talked to council members from Alpharetta, from Johns Creek, from Roswell. We've done more so far, I think, in actual.
No, I'm talking about people that are already doing the municipal elections.
I think some people who actually spoke tonight have talked to other cities, and I think that would be part of it, is go to the cities, out of the 16 cities that are doing it, talk to them and find out how are they doing it. That's part of, I think, design the process. If they're doing it today, let's look at what their manual says, and we can build off from that instead of starting from scratch. So I agree with that.
Laura?
No, and that's a great start, because one of the questions I have is, you've got this process to run a municipal election, and you've got state and federal. I mean, how do those merge? Do you send people? Those are the well, it can be less expensive. So I just want to understand that before we, in some of those cities where it's being done. I think that's the first step. And that needs to be, a time frame to have those initial gates looked at.
I think
For a city our size, in a place that has very high expectations. I can assure you that I don't think we're going to be able to accommodate ballot boxes that are made, or, I think people are going to expect the security at the level that we are experiencing, at least now. So I would suggest that to be.
Yeah. Joe?
Yeah, so our challenge right now is understanding what the definition of feasible is, okay? Because we can shortcut this whole thing and just say, yes, it's feasible. Okay, now what are we going to do? Or we could say, yes, it's feasible and it'll cost us $10,000. Okay, then what are we going to do? Or we could say, yes, it's feasible, it's going to cost us $10,000 and we're going to have 50 people volunteer. So this is really about understanding the details that are part of this decision, okay? And so who needs to feed off those details? Well, the people that are going to actually be executing this, right? I have no doubt that we have enough people just in the audience tonight that can put their heads together and come up with a plan, a run book on how the city could actually conduct and execute its own municipal election. I have no doubt we couldn't do that, all right? What we need to understand is, if we put energy into that and if we produce a product that says, here's how it all gets done, what criteria do we need to make sure exists in that work that we can act on to say, yes, actually, absolutely, this is feasible, let's make it happen, or no, this is not going to be worth what it's going to take us to do it. So to me, how the heck, before we get engaged and start spinning up our wheels on process mapping or this, that, or the other, we need to make sure that we tell people, look, this is the data we need, this is the information we need, this is what's going to define feasible. And if you can answer that question, they wouldn't get on more debate.
Yeah, I think the question is, how do we, do we start small with a small group to study and bring us back a report? And then, reach out more. Obviously, there's lots of resources out there, but I think that's the question. I don't think anybody's denying or against looking into doing this. So I think that's the key. I mean, I know me personally, and granted, I won't be here much longer, so I probably won't be dealing with this, but I will as a citizen and a voter. But, would want to have, some kind of spreadsheet and a plan, a work plan and whatnot in front of us to actually vote to, obviously we're not voting on actually doing this process or taking this on, but at least to have some kind of plan of, hey, this looks promising, here's this and that. So I think the key, and again, we're not voting on anything tonight, but we can at least express some interest in moving forward. I know we've got a couple council members, we've got a couple staff members, do we have them convene and ask some of the big questions and start to narrow it down and see, does this make sense? And then they always can reach out to those that have experience in the community and other cities and whatnot and fine tune things. And, as long as we all support moving forward, then at some point we have to reconvene and really look at all facts. Rick?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm a little bit simplistic or simple-minded, but I go back to when we weren't a city. And there were a bunch of people, some of them probably in this room, and we knew we weren't getting good service from Fulton County. We knew that we didn't have the police protection or the public safety that we wanted to have. We made a decision to say, let's look at this. Let's do a feasibility study. Let's go through the details. Let's try to do it. It wasn't created for us. After we did all that, then it came forward and says, this is something we as a city want to do. Do we want to vote on actually becoming a city? Can we stand it up? Then after we voted and said, yes, we're going to be a city, then there was all the hard work that this council, Joe, you were on there too, had to pass all the ordinances, had to staff what we needed to do for police and fire. I guess I'm just struggling with what we need to do before we say we're going to start. That's the part where I'm a little concerned.
I'm going to be, hold your applause. I'm going to be even more simple. Can you guys get together with our staff and bring us back something, a preliminary feasibility study by talking to all the folks and, factions that we talked to, and bring it back and we can present it to the council, or we can all discuss it and move forward?
If I could,
just like you say with, getting together, talking about Fulton County and the city and all that.
well, if I could just address, first of all, when we talked a little bit about the federal process, we don't have the authority to even take on the county, state, or federal
We're only
elections.
talking municipal now.
No, so we're only talking municipal, and the two never are at the same time. Even years are when we actually do the county, state, and federal. So on the even years like 2022, that's when we're gonna have those elections. The odd years in the state of Georgia, in our charter, the state of Georgia said that's when we choose as a state to do municipal elections and only municipal elections. The time where you may have a little bit crossover is if you have a special election. And that's a different process. Again, that still is not held at the local level. That's controlled at the state unless they change the legislation where we have the authority to do it. So I don't even think we need to worry about looking at that at this point in time because we don't have the authority to do it. So my concern is just looking, I guess, more at this point. And as far as a feasibility study, I don't know how until you do the work to see how you could run an election and look at the cost and the linkages, I don't know how you can say whether or not we're going to do it. So that's why I'm not even proposing, we're going to do our own election. I think we need to do this feasibility study, which would include process work, to find out, can we do it? And also find out what the cost is. And again, maybe I'm being simplistic.
No, that's exactly, it's only municipal, and that's exactly what I said.
Yeah, but I want to be
Do that, Paul.
clear, Joe, if you don't mind me
No,
clarifying.
absolutely, yeah.
Because I think I'm hearing two different paths, and I think it's now becoming a little bit confusing. One path that I heard is that we consider whether we're going to do a feasibility study, and then I'm even confused how to explain it. So I think I've heard two things from our own council tonight, and that is there's a path that you'd like us to go, some people would like us to go down, that we study to do the study. What we really want to do is the study.
Correct. Yeah.
So the vote tonight is,
Which is not a vote, but
I think
a direction.
okay, well, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
I hope that there's going to be a voicing of council where it can be measured that there is either support for going forward or not support for going forward. To actually do the work to determine whether or not at the end of this study period, we can conduct our own election or not.
That's exactly what I said.
Okay, great. In my mind, that's eventually
what I'm-
express our opinion either for or
It's like
against the study.
Whatever type, you come up with either a budget or a plan and whatnot.
Yeah.
And does this make sense? And then bring it back.
Okay.
So tonight, the decision would be, is there support to move forward to do a feasibility study? I am all for that. Again, I'd like to keep it, general and smaller at the first. You guys have stepped up, got a couple of staff members, and you can reach out to other folks and other municipalities to put some together and come back with the answer. Does this make sense or not?
If you don't mind me going again, Joe.
Absolutely.
So I think Councilmember Maury has said that as well, that in his mind, and he's done a great job of leading us to the point where we are today and working with a small group of citizens that we identified as a council as well to support this. And it's our objective with the people that have spoken about this already is to keep it tight and keep it succinct so that we're not overwhelming staff, but yet broad enough that we can't be accused of not being inclusive and having a predetermined conclusion. So we want to make sure that we engage to ensure that it is transparent and that we give it the appropriate vetting to ensure that at the end of the day, we end up with a legitimate process. And I think to Peyton's point earlier, there are 16 examples out there today that we have heard about that might be a good model for us to start with, to go take a look at.
Reach out to them. So, I don't know, Paul, if you have any comments, or Steve, on how this, again, we're not voting on it, but we could show support, and obviously.
I think it is to staff to interpret the direction that they're seeing from the board. There is no vote or agenda item to be voted on this evening. If that support results in bringing it back before the council with a specific proposal to be considered, that would be the time to do that. But in the meantime, the standard processes that they might lead into that agenda item.
Rick?
Go ahead, Joe.
I'm just saying, let's go, man.
Well,
why are we talking about
We already had our one clap.
I just don't, I think we're complicating something that doesn't have to be complicated. I think we're feeding into,
Please hold your comments.
We're feeding into what could be bureaucracy, where we're getting tied up in trying to decide and formalize. I think simply, and when I brought this up back on the 18th of October, I didn't want us to continue. This is me. I thought we were to the point where we once gave direction. We already gave direction on August 8th. So tonight, what I would like to see is we're ready to move forward. And yes, we already even formed a potential committee of 2 council members, 2 staff members that staff gave us that recommendation. They asked for nominations. They said, are there any community members? So I guess what I'm looking for is, can we make a decision to move forward and start this committee so we can start doing some work? That's what I'd like to see. I think we've heard, and I think we're all saying we're ready to move forward. We don't know what the result will be until we start doing the work. And I agree, keep it small, keep it focused, because we don't want to become, huge committee and management by committee. At the same time, I think we just need to start on this. I think it's time enough. It's been 3.5 months since we decided we were going to do it.
The only disagreement I have is I don't think we're trying to complicate it. I think we all want to do it. I think it's just a fact, if it were me or somebody else volunteered. Let's get together, let's roll up our sleeves, put something together, answer the questions, and then bring it back to the council to see if it makes sense.
Okay.
And again, I think that's where I am.
Well, the only thing I'd ask is, how are we going to know that we have something that we're going to agree to move forward on? What is it that you're looking for? And I'm saying that, I'm being honest, I'm asking,
Well, I
what is
think
it?
that's on us, Rick.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
on.
that's the committee that's been formed.
Yeah,
It's
so
on the
Can we
committee.
start with the committee? Can we get authorization to start with the committee? Because that's what we've been waiting on.
Yeah, it's on the committee to bring back the conclusions that say, here are our findings. And it's then up to council to determine, and the mayor to determine, yeah, this is a thumbs up, let's proceed, or it's a bust and we stop.
But proceed with what? Are we talking about
With
starting a feasibility study or?
No, with
Okay, 'cause
conducting
I'm
our
hearing
election.
two different things. I guess I'm confused. Are we saying we're ready to go with the feasibility study? Is that what we're saying?
Let me help you out, Rick.
Yeah.
It's up to you and the committee, whoever you include,
Yep.
to convince us
Yeah.
that we can either do it or we shouldn't try.
So that means we will start on the feasibility study.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And I'm good with that.
Hold your clauses, but just to clarify that, so, and I'm supportive of that. I think everybody is, I believe. And again, it's not a vote, but staff will have to take that direction. You two guys have stepped up, maybe meet with our staff members and, put together something. Then you can reach out to others and whatnot to get the information. But, we can talk about it forever. I think just give it, a month or two or whatever. You guys dig in and come up with something, bring back to council, and let's look and see if it makes sense, which it certainly may.
Well, I think it may take us longer than that, Joe.
Yeah,
I think a
so
couple of
too.
months would be creating a false expectation of what this process will look like. I think we need to agree to move forward and we'll bring back to you a timeline
Okay.
that makes sense.
I mean, to me, that makes sense. Let's keep it simple. You guys get together, come up with some reasonable expectations and some outcomes, and then bring that back to the council and just keep them updated.
Yeah, I see it as it's not an immediate thing. I mean, we've heard different bits and pieces, but I think I guess we just want to get started. That's really, I
Yeah.
think, what we need to do.
So is council good with that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay,
And can
and,
you, just for the folks,
Laura, you got the.
yeah, so just the definition of the committee, because that's ambiguous, and I just want to make sure that if we have a committee, it's known and folks can participate in some form or fashion. I mean, I'm looking at the city manager, you're going to have to implement this committee. And I think we know who the council members are and who the staff are. Just would like to be able to say to folks, who's participating and, or is it an ad hoc committee?
I'd like to make sure that gets cleared up tonight.
Yeah.
Can I come in on that?
Go ahead, Paul.
So I think hopefully to bring some clarity to that. When we had the more significant discussion last time about this, we identified 2 members of council, 2 members of staff, and 2 members from the community. And that's been clear. I think now at this point, to figure out what the scale is, that group has to meet with city manager to determine what the human capital investment has to be. And then it is upon us to bring that back to you as well. It may very well be that we need to identify some community engagement meetings where we invite the community to participate. It may be that there's a survey that has to be done. I think it's premature at the moment to conclude what the process will look like until we engage in the process to identify some of those parameters. But it is all about transparency and it's all about inclusion, but not to the point of being out of control. So we've got 6 people identified to start. Let's proceed with those 6.
Yeah, who are the 6, Paul?
So at this point, identified are myself and Rick Mooring, Stacy and Tammy. And then members of the community were Lisa Cawley and Mark Amick.
Right, and I think those were, at least initially with the process is, Steve asked us, do you have nominations, or do you have people that you think are have expressed interest? And Steve, I believe you can tell us, I think you reached out to those community members.
I did. Those were the two names that I received back from council, and I did reach out to those two individuals.
I think there was a little bit of concern bringing community members on the front end until you did an initial assessment. That doesn't mean those community members and their input can be brought in and you can meet with them and whatnot, but as a formal committee, and again, that was not concern from me, but I think that was brought up. So that would be the discussion is, do you come up with a plan first, a rough plan, get some ideas, and then decide to broaden the committee and whatnot, or, which direction you want to go there?
And I'm assuming all these meetings are going to be open to the public, correct?
Sure.
Okay, and
It would have
advertised.
to be. I mean, we want
Okay.
to be.
Oh, they don't make sure.
I don't think that's the case, the way it's being set up. That was
But see,
one
I
of the
think they all
reasons that I made.
every meeting should be open to the public.
I mean, you have a meeting of 6 people and a feasibility study. That was one of the other reasons I came back to y'all and said, maybe you want to consider creating a council-created board. Therefore, you would each appoint someone to this committee and subject it to the Open Meetings Act and have formal meetings. What you're creating is an informal feasibility study group, the way as you're doing it right now. So I don't think you're going to achieve what you just stated with the group you just created.
I want to make sure it's clear. This is not creating a formal committee
Right.
this evening. This was a presentation of maybe the results of some investigation that we're trying to move forward. If we present a plan for a committee or proposal with a clear direction and scope and intent, and we can vote and approve that and get it rolling informally. And they could be ready to roll as soon as that's approved, through informal opportunities to discuss outside of before the vote. But
I think
this
Pete,
evening we can't.
your point, and again, I may be the minority here, but just like in any private matter or business matter, first thing you do is come up with a business plan. And that could be come up by 2 or 3 people. And then you can publicly share that plan, and then you bring in more people and you get discussions. We don't make any decisions on it, but it's almost, do you put the cart before the horse? Do we first sit down? It's like any project, any building like this is being built. First you come up with a budget, then later you bid it out to contractors and whatnot, but you come up with a reasonable budget and the timeline and
Well, I
a
mean,
spreadsheet to see.
I guess my only issue is if we're having citizens, or having council members, or having staff, we're talking about elections, it should probably be open meetings. That's just my 2 cents.
I totally agree with that. What I'm saying is,
Yeah.
I think it should be a smaller group at first to come up with a basic spreadsheet. And does this make sense? And then bring, it will grow from there. If it makes sense, which, hopefully it will, then you grow the committee, you have public meetings. But I'm not saying that it would not be all public meetings, but
You might be able to thread the needle on that a bit by having this group come report back to the council in an open meeting.
exactly.
And
yeah.
and have that opportunity for the public to provide input, feedback from what's presented and things along those lines.
We just have to have something to present
Yeah.
to get public feedback.
That works.
So.
Okay.
So I guess it looks to me unanimous without a vote, but just a nod that there would be support moving forward with a feasibility study. But then it would have to be some kind of process after the initial study to move it forward publicly and input. Is that clear as mud?
If I could, just to make sure I'm understanding, I'll convene the group of 6 that was identified. We'll start the process. Maybe we get back before you within a couple of weeks. To give you an idea, this is no different than initiating kind of any other project, to what you just said, Mayor, and give you an idea of what the objectives that this group are going to try to achieve, make sure it resonates with what the council and what the community is looking for, and then just move forward. That's what I'm hearing. If does that?
I'm good with that. Is that rest of the council?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's proceed.
All right. Thank you all for being here tonight for this item. And if you wouldn't mind staying on through the next 3 hours. Kidding. Kidding. All right. Thank you, guys. Let's move on to, where are we? Reports and presentations.
First
First presentation.
Mayor, that first presentation, item A, is consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 20, Article 2 of the Milton Floodplain Management Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance. It's agenda item number 21339. Item B is consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 20, Article 5 of the Milton Stream Buffer Protection Ordinance. Agenda item number 21340. Mayor?
Okay. Do I have a motion on our first presentation as read?
Mayor, I move that we approve the first presentation items as read.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Longoria with a second from Councilmember Morag. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, we'll now move on to our public hearing. If the city clerk could please call that item.
Mayor, that first item is consideration of the abandonment of all public rights-of-way within the Kingsley Estate subdivision. It's agenda item number 21341. Public Works Director, Ms. Sarah Leaders.
While this pulls up, good evening, Mayor and Council. This public hearing is a required step in our abandonment process, and I'm going to real quickly go through what that process is, where we are tonight, and then the next steps in this proposal. So our first step we have is to submit the initial application, and the Kingsley Estates HOA submitted that first application in September of 2018, September 4th, 2018. A preliminary council review was held at the September 24th, 2018 council meeting, where council voted to accept the application and allow the proposal to move ahead. Then in September of this year, Kingsley HOA picked back up on the process, submitted their supporting documents, and they've indicated that there's going to be less than 100% support, which requires 2 public hearings. Which brings us to tonight. Tonight's the initial public hearing, where the purpose is to have the opportunity for comments on the abandonment proposal. Then on December the 6th, we're scheduled to have the final public hearing. And along with that, there will be a staff presentation as well as a new business item that will be a consideration of a resolution to abandon the rights of way. And so that summarizes the process. And again, the purpose of tonight's hearing is to provide the opportunity to hear public comments on the proposed abandonment. So that's all I have.
Okay. So do we have any public comment on this?
I do, Mayor.
Okay, please call the first speaker.
I'd like to call Mr. Martin Rahensky to the podium.
Good evening, Council. I like to say this is past my bedtime, but my name is Martin Rahensky. I live at 16895 Quayside Drive in the city of Milton. I'm concerned about privatizing and gating the Kingsley Estates home development. Approximately 2.5 years ago, we purchased a house that's on the corner of Birmingham and Quayside. At that time, the realtor had told us that there was no issues with easement at all with this property, and that was reinforced by an assessment done for the mortgage. And in a written report submitted by the mortgage company, they indicated that there was no easement issues with the property. The wife and myself went ahead and we bought this house. I'd just like to briefly give you a snapshot of who we are and how we came about being able to buy this house. I'm a veteran. We're senior citizens, obviously. I worked on the police departments for 47 years, servicing the community. My wife worked with handicapped and special children for 35 years. This house represents our lifetime of saving. That's the importance of this house to us. When we purchased the house in 2019, there was no mention or no information that the community was considering privatizing or gating the community. We first heard this at an HOA meeting about a year ago. We contacted the president of the HOA, and I asked that he keep me informed because our house was probably the house most impacted of the 96 houses. I provided each of you with a folder, should have several pictures. The area that the HOA Gate Committee is considering building part of the gate on is directly on the front lawn of my property. You have a picture where there's red flags that delineate the exact front area where there's a possibility of portions of this gate being constructed. Now, think as an individual, if this was your house, this was a lifetime saving of working, almost 50 years in saving. We moved to Milton because we have family in Milton, and also because of the kind of community Milton is. It's a quiet, country, open type of community. My concerns are with a pedestrian and auto gate opening and closing feet from your front door 24 hours a day, and also what would be the negative impact on the valuation of my house if we have a portion of a gate structure immediately on my property, where I consider my property. Now, there's alternatives. You also have a picture of a portion of land across the street from my house, directly across the street. This plat is relatively level. It's pretty good size, and it's controlled by the HOA of the community. So if a gate was going to be constructed, what I would hope is that reasonableness would exist, and they try to shift most of that construction to the unused vacant area and not impact my house, my front lawn, to any great extent. I'd like to thank you for listening to me. And I also like to thank you very much for the respect that you showed the veterans. There's not a lot of cities that had flags and crosses out for veterans in this country. This is not the first year that you've done that. So as a veteran, I appreciate that recognition, and I want to personally thank you for it. Thanks for hearing me out.
Thank you very much. Okay, do we have any more public hearing?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to invite Angela Green to the podium.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and staff. My name is Angela Green. I live at 16615 Quayside Drive. I'm the Vice President of the Kingsley Estates HOA, and I've been living in the neighborhood for about 7 years. Prior to that, I lived in Crooked Creek for almost 10 years.
For approximately 5 years, we have been battling a ridiculous amount of cut-through traffic. As a community, we are very concerned about the number of cars speeding down our main road, Quayside Drive. Many of these motorists live in Cherokee County or Forsyth County. They consistently show a blatant lack of respect for our neighborhood by speeding, not stopping at stop signs, and even passing buses as they're rushing down our main road. Quayside Drive was never intended to be a cut-through, and we are ready to put a stop to it. As a neighborhood, we're concerned about the safety of our residents, especially our children and pets. The sheer number of cars cutting through is overwhelming, especially while our children are getting on and off the bus. Not only is it dangerous and inappropriate, but it's devaluing our properties. On a personal note, I have 3 sons that are always playing outside. I genuinely fear for their safety. My middle schooler has to stand and wait for literally a parade of cars before he can cross Quayside Drive in the mornings at 8 a.m. because there are so many people from Cherokee County cutting through. And just last Friday, my high schooler was almost hit by a car as he crossed the road to catch the bus because the car cutting through did not want to stop and wait for the bus. It's completely absurd. After many years of discussion, our residents are ready to move forward with privatization. We have conducted a neighborhood vote by petition, which currently has signatures from almost 80% of homeowners. This well exceeds the standard set by the city of Milton of 67%. Now, regarding the placement and aesthetics of the gate, we live in a really nice neighborhood. We will install gates and landscape that is extremely aesthetically pleasing. Trust me, our residents want and expect that. I personally live at the Freemanville Road entrance of the neighborhood, so I'm very sensitive to how the gate will affect my personal property. I share that same concern for the Birmingham Highway entrance. Because of the cost associated with getting civil engineering plans drawn, we do not currently know the exact placement of the gates. As soon as we get approval from council, we will have civil plans drawn. I would like to assure council that we will make every effort to minimize the impact on any adjacent property. As far as the Birmingham Highway entrance is concerned, where Mr. Rohinsky lives, the gate will not be placed on his property. If we need additional space for the build, we will take it from the common area near the tennis courts. Again, every effort will be made to ensure that we create a beautiful entrance and minimize the impact on adjacent properties. I truly believe that it's in the best interest of our neighborhood to privatize our roads. This will create a safer environment for our children and families. This will in turn increase our property values, which only benefits everybody. Thank you so much for your thoughtful consideration.
Okay, thank you. Tammy?
Mayor, we received one additional comment card after the item was read. I just want to make the council aware of that.
I'm okay with that if council is. Do we need to, Paul, say anything? Do we need to do anything formally? Allow them to read that? Make an exception?
If you would move to suspend that rule for that one agenda item.
Okay. Do I have a motion that we would allow the one additional comment card that came in late?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to receive the additional comment card that came in late.
Second.
I have a motion for approval for us to hear this additional comment card from Councilmember Bentley along with Councilman Morrig, second in that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. I'd next like to call Mr. Michael G. to the podium, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Michael G. I live at 145 Toll House Court in Milton. I am the Kingsley Estates board member, serving as president and treasurer. I just want to state just a couple of points to highlight some of the things that we've done thus far. We've been very prepared. We've conducted several interviews and gotten quotes from multiple vendors for gate companies, surveillance companies, as well as paving companies. We've also factored in additional maintenance costs for lights, obviously pavement. We've done inspections on our sewers. So we feel like we have a very good grasp of what our obligations would be in this space. Second has to do with our roads. One thing I want to highlight is that the city of Milton has come and did a survey of our roads and scored several sections of our roads at around 40 range. I think Ms. Leaders will have a little more details, which on the pavement condition index is rated or considered very poor. So our roads as it is today needs to be addressed. One of the things that would be a benefit to the city as well as the taxpayers is the financial burden of not having to, or the lack of financial burden to repave our roads, because the HOA has already voted to take on that financial expense. And then lastly, it has to do with security. I know Ms. Green highlighted some points as well. We also have another gentleman from our community. We had a potential child abduction incident in our neighborhood. We have a lot of kids that run, play, ride their bikes in our neighborhood. And this was a very concerning incident or potential incident. It was actually televised as well. So that is also one of the concerns that we're trying to address as part of our request for abandonment. And then lastly, just to reiterate the point that Angela made with regards to Mr. Rahinsky's concerns, they are noted, and we haven't made any plans yet. So I think some of the concerns that he might have regarding plans on it, those aren't definitive plans. I think those are more concerns. We are making every attempt to make sure that we minimally impact anybody in the neighborhood, not only him, but the other entrants as well. But again, I don't want to use this word, but we have to see what's feasible. And the civil engineers will dictate what we can or can't do. But our commitment to him as well as everyone else is to make sure we have a plan that minimizes any impact to the community and its homeowners. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy, do we have any other public comment?
We do, Mayor. Mr. Rob Bonatakis.
Rob Bonatakis, 16695 Quayside Drive. First off, I want to thank you for hearing us out tonight. I'm also the 12U Hopewell Fighting Irish Rec Fall Champions, just so everyone's aware. Angela did a great job preparing what to say and what's really happening in our neighborhood. I live right in the middle of Quayside, which is basically the perfect spot for everybody to get up to speed when they come through the neighborhood. I've actually got a couple kids that play baseball, obviously, and I have a little gun that they check their speed on their boat, on their pitching. And I've seen cars come in front of my house at 45 miles an hour. Okay, my wife is very protective of the boys. My 12 and 13-year-old, they're no longer allowed to go outside without supervision. These are 12 and 13-year-old kids. When I was a kid, 5, 6, I was gone all day and came back at night. And we're not even able to let our kids go down to the end of the street because it is so bad especially during daytime hours. So the reason my concern here is, you move into a neighborhood, you really don't want to put out this extra expense. It's painful, right, for a lot of folks in the subdivision. But the fact is, it's a really dangerous situation that we're living with. And I actually, every morning when I pull out, I go by Angela's house and I see her son waiting for the bus. I have made a point to just go 15 miles an hour. And I'll look behind me and see if there's anybody coming from the Cherokee County side of the subdivision. And by the time I get through the subdivision, there's 4 cars riding my rear end. And I've actually had cars that have passed me to leave. Well, you have Angela's boys waiting for the bus and a couple other young ladies that I see on the way to school. So the fact is, I'm just here to voice my concern. I support, Angela's initial comments and, look forward to being able to hopefully close in our subdivision and have that quaint, quiet Milton experience inside our subdivision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Tim.
Mayor, I'd like to invite Amy, and I'm so sorry, I'm not going to get your last name right. I'll let you do your honors.
Amy, why not?
Amy, why not? Amy in the pink and gray shirt.
I'm Amy Marcinchak. I live at 16700 Quayside Drive. We moved to the neighborhood from Chicago almost 9 years ago. And in that time, I've seen the traffic get just unbelievably busy. People speed. I witnessed the kids getting on the bus, and drivers are honking at the bus as the kids are getting on. So I'm here to give my support to Kingsley Gating. I think it will help our property values. It will keep us safe. And in the 9 years we've been here, I also see more younger families moving in. My youngest is in college. My oldest is married, but the kids are young and we want to keep them safe. And I think that's what's important about Kingsley Estates. So I appreciate it
Great.
and have a good night.
Thank you.
Two more, Mayor. We have Miss Judy Birds.
I figure by now you have my address. Judy Birds, 1165 Breen Drive in Milton, Georgia. I'll recall that this council, and I think most of the members here, heard a similar plea for private gating of a community, which ended up having some major ramifications on traffic patterns throughout the city. And I want to make sure you as council consider that in your decision-making. Here in Kingsley, this road has been an asset publicly since 2009 when the community was built. The majority of the construction was complete over 5 years ago. And so many of the people that bought there bought not with the expectation that this would be a gated community, but rather that they would have access to both Birmingham Highway and Freemanville Road. Looking back to Crooked Creek also, you remember that there was a traffic study that was conducted to understand traffic patterns. Of course, because you have to figure out who's coming in and who's going out rather than stopping. It was done manually, but the community did pay for that to try to assess how much of that traffic was cut through versus local in helping to make its decision. And I would encourage that a traffic study be done in this case as well as to find out how much of it is coming from Cherokee County, since you have to hand count it anyway. The community should also consider that when you privatize your community, you're not going to have police patrols. They don't come into gated communities. You're going to have to hire your own security if that's what you desire. Of course, they can be able to come to respond to emergencies, but they don't do patrols. If council decides that they do wish to grant this, I urge you to consider the timing. We have 4 major construction projects that are going on around Birmingham Road that can impact the rest of the community that lives along and north of Birmingham Road. They are, as you are aware, the Birmingham Crossroads Roundabout. This is a state project. It will probably at times result in traffic being closed so they can complete some of that work, and which will have an impact to patterns. Also, the Birmingham Road and Freemanville Roundabout, which also feeds the Freemanville side from the northern part of Milton. The Birmingham Road Middle Bridge is going to be closed for repairs. I believe that's this coming summer. Also, another path of alternative route is the Clarity Road Bridge, which is currently closed. So I also urge you to look at the reopening of the Clarity Road Bridge and the timing of this gating. Consideration should also be given on what the city might save in having not to repave Quayside, but alternatively have to fund Mountain Road and its improvements. It's got some huge shoulder drop-offs, some huge ditches, and a bad intersection in Freemanville Road. And so I would suggest for the greater public safety that that road must be improved as well in consideration of this gating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to call Sean Robertson to the podium.
John Robertson, 16725 Quayside Drive. So wasn't really expecting to speak tonight, but I do want to represent for the neighborhood how important I think it is that we move forward with the privatization and the gating. The arguments that were just made there only state how much more traffic would be expected to come through the neighborhood, making it worse in the short term. And that, and the incident we spoke earlier too of the children were my children. So this is really important to me that we do this. I know a gate doesn't necessarily make it immune to those types of things. However, it is a pass-through neighborhood right now. And when I bought in that neighborhood, and I think the majority in there, we did not expect that this would be a pass-through street. It was supposed to be a neighborhood street. And clearly the problems, especially going south on Birmingham, make it an ideal cut-through for a number of neighborhoods. The two communities that probably use us the most are both gated communities, right? South on Birmingham. I know that they would be certainly, if it was their neighborhood, be looking to get it gated as well. So I appreciate your time and consideration for this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, that concludes the public comment.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing and open up for council discussion and questions. Anybody? If not, I'd like to ask both staff and Paul on the legal side. I know I can only think of a couple instances we've done this in the past. And again, they have to meet certain requirements for percentage and whatnot, which I believe they have. But other than a yes or no, what can the city, what enforcement do we have? I know there's some concerns about placement and timing and whatnot. If the council were to approve something like this, is there any controls that the city has or not?
Well, in terms of placement, you only have your development standards that they would have to comply with. This would be anything they do would be private on private property at that point in time after the abandonment process, and they have flexibility to do with that as if it were their own private property, which it would be at that time. In terms of the timing, again, their development of it is their schedule. Your decision could be implemented ahead of whenever they decide to start putting up that, but it would be generally out of your control once you've voted to approve the abandonment.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a process of permitting that would have to be complied with, so it wouldn't be immediate.
Okay, Laura.
So this is the first of two hearings because we didn't meet the threshold of the 100%. So in the next hearing, I think we would all feel better if there was some collaboration between the property owners. I know that you don't have your engineering survey yet, but in good faith to be sure that no one is adversely affected with the gate. I guess I was a little bit confused about the red flags on the picture. I don't know if the HOA board has seen the red flags. Maybe you all could, yeah, that's in the packet that we received. So, that would be my suggestion, is to reconcile some of those pictures and questions and concerns.
Paul?
Actually, question for legal again, please. So the abandonment of the roads is one thing, and then their entitlement to do the gating, I understand. But just the rest of the community standards set by Milton in terms of the kinds of things that can be done on the 1 acre lots or whatever the lot sizes are, those parameters still stay in place. All the Milton's codes remain intact.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And then just, I guess, a comment to echo Councilmember Bentley's is I would hope that by the time we get to the next meeting, that for those of you who are interested, I guess the leadership of the HOA encourage you to reach out to Mr. Rohinsky in particular and to ensure that you can hopefully find a way to accommodate both of your interests. That's in the best interest of the community. I would hope that you can find some kind of compromise.
What else, Rick?
I'd echo what Paul said and Laura said. I think it's important, if you can, actually reach out, because I think as a homeowner, Mr. Rinsky's probably looking for some assurances other than, well, we'll do our best, because that doesn't reassure him that you're not going to actually build it on his side. So maybe there's something you can do in writing where you work in agreement before you come back before us for the next hearing.
Joe, anything?
No, I don't have any reason to put the brakes on this now. another chance to discuss this before we vote, so I would wait for that.
Okay, anybody else? And I would just echo, I would think it would behoove everyone to, if nothing else, a preliminary plan, just to come to the meeting of the minds, and then if the engineering has to change just a little bit, but to address the situation there on the Birmingham corner, as well as also at Freemanville too, so that at least folks know what to expect, and then we could go from there. Okay. City Clerk will please sound the next public hearing item.
Mayor, that item is consideration of a resolution renewing and/or extending an existing moratorium on the acceptance of alcohol applications, building disturbance permit applications for farm wineries. Agenda item number 21316.
So I'm going to present a little bit of the background on this for you. If you'll recall, back in June, the city adopted an initial 120-day moratorium regarding alcohol applications, building permit applications, and LDP applications for farm wineries in order to allow staff to work on updates to its ordinances and how they're going to apply those ordinances to farm wineries specifically. That was set to expire in October. This council did meet on October 18th and did address the issue at that meeting, did approve a resolution to extend that moratorium until December 17th, I believe it was. At the meeting, there was some discussion. I understand there was some question as to whether or not a sufficient zoning procedures law compliant advertisement and public hearing was conducted in order to proceed and to ensure that any moratorium going forward is fully compliant with the zoning procedures law and enforceable. We recommended and have brought before you kind of a second take from that October 18th meeting. This would be a public hearing to extend, renew or extend the originally adopted June moratorium on farm wineries. There was, as part of the October motion, an exception to be allowed to the original hearing, which would be to allow I believe it's to allow those applications that had been submitted, which had shown a vested right to proceed with the process despite the adoption of the moratorium. And that would be also continued as part of this proposal. So tonight would be essentially an extension, and I'm looking to see the proposed date is now January of 2022. It's a month longer, and my understanding is that staff is looking for that in order to allow them the sufficient time to get the ordinances that are in process fully approved through Planning Commission and through the City Council before the moratorium would expire. They didn't feel like they were going to be able to get that in by December 17th, where things stand right now.
Paul pinch hit on that one. Thank you. I appreciate that. And he was just informed about 5 minutes ago that he was. So thank you for doing that. That was a little bit of a belt and suspenders item, as we wanted to make sure we built in enough time and to give the Planning Commission flexibility to be able to look into the item if they feel they need to defer it, things along those lines. So we wanted to make sure we built in that capacity as well. And that's the purpose of the item before you this evening.
And to move it till after some of us are gone. I'm kidding. All right, do we have any public comment?
Not on this item, Mayor, no.
Okay, I'll close the hearing and then open up for discussion or questions. Or a motion.
I can make a motion.
Go, girl.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 21-316.
Second?
To have a motion for approval from Councilmember Bentley with a second from Councilmember Moore. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Mr. Mayor, just as a formal matter, we do have this set as a new business item, formally
I'm sorry.
as that agenda item.
You know what? Yeah. No, you totally
That's where the vote's taken.
correct. So
That's the next
disregard
one.
that. I guess
But we
technically.
may be
just-
opening
Now we
that.
get to vote on
We
it.
just, never mind.
And if you give me just 1 second, I need to check one.
Put an NA on that vote. Or save it till later.
Save it till the next item.
If you forgive me, I'm just looking to make sure we've got the right language. Mention.
Perhaps, Tammy, you could sing a tune.
What should I choose? The January 19th is what we put.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the language that was added in October makes it into the December, since if we're referencing.
In this resolution for tonight, that second page, whereas we added the December 7th.
Okay. I know that that one exception was added in October, and I want to make sure that it was covered in the moratorium resolution will be extending as amended the October.
Okay. All right, do we need to do anything since I took a vote until we, versus no, that just doesn't count?
That vote was.
The practice vote.
Okay.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So there's no zoning agenda or unfinished business. So we'll move on to our new business. Tammy, if you'll please call those items.
Mayor, that item is consideration of a resolution renewing and/or extending an existing moratorium on the acceptance of alcohol applications, building permit applications, and land disturbance permit applications for farm wineries. It is agenda item number 21316.
Do we have any public comment on this?
We do not.
I'll close the hearing. Any other council discussion? Okay. I'll open up for a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 21-316.
Second?
Okay, so I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Bentley with a second from Councilmember Moore. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. All right, Tammy, if you'll please call the next item.
Thank you, Mayor. That item is consideration of a resolution of the City of Milton supporting an application to the Atlanta Regional Commission for funding right-of-way and construction phases of the Big Creek Greenway connection. It is agenda item number 21342. Public Works Director, Ms. Sarah Leaders.
Thank you. The Milton connection to Big Creek Greenway has been a project that's been part of multiple plans in the past, and most recently our strategic plan. In 2013, we received the first funding on this project. It was a scoping feasibility study funding. And then in 2019, we discussed if we wanted to move forward with the project as a federally funded project. In 2020, we accepted federal funds for the preliminary engineering through a project framework agreement with GDOT. So design is underway right now. We have a preliminary right-of-way cost estimate as well as a construction cost breakdown as part of the plan development. So that really sets us up in a good position that ARC has opened a call for more federal funding. So it makes perfect sense to request our next phases of funding to match our local money with some federal dollars. So this resolution just approves moving forward with an application to request those future phases for this project.
Okay. Do we have public comment on this?
We do not, sir.
Okay, then I'll close the hearing and open up. Any questions for Sarah? Comments on this? I think it makes total sense. But,
Amen.
okay. All right. Anybody want to sing or a little tune or something?
I can look something up if you like.
Yeah, if you want to look something up, get me something, anything, something else while you're at it. I'll open it for motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 21-342.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Bentley with a second for Councilmember Moore. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, is there anything council would like to report on?
One more item.
One more agenda
One
item.
more, Mayor.
One more item.
Tammy.
All right. Sorry, Tammy.
You messed me up. I'm so excited. This is my
You
first
know,
item majorly.
Will you please send the
Give me the
final
floor,
new business
please.
item?
Mayor, that item is consideration of a resolution adopting the 2022 City of Milton City Council regular meeting and work session schedule. It's agenda item number 21-343. We are asking for you all to consider a resolution which will approve the 2022 council regular and work session meeting dates. You have before you a draft calendar that's going to have the 36 upcoming regular and work session meetings. You'll see the blue is highlighted for the regular meetings and the red is highlighted for your work sessions. This calendar does include the 10 city observed holidays that are reflected in green. You will note that there's going to be 4 Wednesday meetings that will result due to holidays falling on a Monday. So our first council meeting of next year, minus our beloved Mayor Lockwood, will be January the 3rd, and we will be, for 2022, that's our first regular meeting of the new year. So if you will approve this calendar tonight, we will make it available on our city website, and we'll have it available on the table by our public comment cards for citizens.
Okay. Anybody have any comments on this? Or concern? Let's see, April 11th, I believe I'm going to be on spring break that week, so I don't want to change that one. So if not, I'll,
Mayor, we do have one public comment on this.
I'm sorry, do we have any public comment?
Who would do that?
Adam Danella, if you will
Ready to go.
come to the
What
podium.
do we do wrong here?
No. Adam Danella, 3119 Haybridge Lane. I just want to say the calendar looks fantastic, and I really appreciate each one of your times that I've had a chance to talk to you, get to know you better, and commend you on your service. And if I can do anything for y'all ever, please just let me know. So thank you, and have a happy Thanksgiving, and I will see all of you or talk to you very soon. But I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
All right, I'll close the public hearing and open for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve agenda item number 21343, resolution for the 2022 City of Milton Council regular meeting and work session schedule.
Second.
I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Morrig with a second from Councilmember Moore. All in favor, please say aye.
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 It's unanimous. Anybody have anything they want to report on? If not, that will conclude our meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and from Councilmember Longoria, second from Councilmember Morrig to adjourn our meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
We're done. Joe.